President, and go from there.
Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed lunch. I'm delighted to introduce a special guest into our meeting today. Peter Fragiskatos is the Member of Parliament here in London North Centre, representing us and everyone in London North Centre in Ottawa. Peter was elected in 2015, and some of you may have known him before that. He was a professor at King's, so we're happy to have one of us representing us. So I'm going to let Peter take it away. I know he has a couple things that he wants to talk about related to community outreach and how some of us can be good advocates and good representatives and things like that. So please welcome Peter.
I think I will stand in the end. I think it's probably less awkward than sitting. So how's it going? Okay, I want it informal. I'm glad to see nobody wore a suit today. I was thinking I'm not wearing a suit, so I think that I'll probably find the same thing on campus. There's probably not going to be a lot of people in shirts and ties and the like, and I'm very glad to see that. I wear suits like 6 days a week, maybe 7 sometimes, so I need a break from that. So thank you for helping me out. It's great to be with you. I really love engaging with young people, and especially young people who have made such a commitment to their community here on campus. Western's a priority for me, the well-being of this university. It's in the constituency that I represent, London North Centre, but I used to teach here. I used to teach at Huron and King's College and did some work with graduate students on the main campus in the area of political science, so I always love coming back and speaking to young people, to faculty, to anybody on campus, really. I was just saying that I was at York's campus recently, and this campus is just much nicer, I gotta tell you. Really, nothing against York, it's a fine education, but to come back to Western, to bring colleagues here, so we had the Minister of Health, Jane Philpott, who is a graduate of our medical school here. We drove around campus because she wanted to see it again. She hadn't been here for a number of years, and she kept remarking about how nice and green it is. And when I heard her say that, it told me, maybe I've taken the campus at least a bit for granted, because I thought about York and thought about the concrete jungle there. So always good to see the greenery on campus, especially this time of year. But you didn't bring me here to talk about nice scenery. You brought me here to talk about what I think makes for a good representative, which I'll tell you, I'm glad to do, and I'm glad to share some perspectives on. But I'm on the job maybe about a year and a half. It'll be 2 years really in October since I was first elected. I have learned a great deal in that span of time, but I will not call myself an expert. I have learned most by doing, as you are and will continue to do. You will learn most in this job as you carry it out. But where I've also tried to be a sponge, if I can put it that way, is when I'm around the more experienced members of Parliament, people that have been there for 10, 15, 20, 25 years in some cases. Whenever they're speaking, I'm listening, I'm asking them questions, and that's something I would encourage you to do, actually, right at the outset. Connect with your predecessors, get to know them if you haven't already. Ask them the questions that are on your mind about advocacy, issues that you think you might be dealing with in this job. Ask them to share with you any advice that they might be willing to pass along. All of that is very, very important. Something that I did even before winning the election. When I made the decision to run, I talked to a number of members of Parliament that had done the job for many years, people like Glenn Pearson, people like Gerard Kennedy. You might know that name. He was Minister of Education for a time in Ontario. I had the chance to get to know him for a variety of reasons outside of politics, and they helped me a lot, but nothing will prepare you for as much as the experience does in terms of the lessons learned. So I brought a few points with me that I wanted to make, aside from the ones that I've made here. First of all, and it's a very simple question to ask yourself, but it's actually the most important question and perhaps the most complicated question that you will ask yourself. So simple at first blush, but more complicated once you give it a second thought, and that is, you have to, as representatives, ask yourselves, what are your responsibilities? In other words, what are your priorities, right? At the end of your term, when it's all said and done, what do you want to have achieved? What key issues do you want to hold up and say, this is what I did? And I can tell you, if there's 40 responsibilities that you're pointing to right now, you're in the wrong place. Paul Martin, the former Prime Minister of this country, said, if you have 40 priorities, you have no priorities, right? If you have 40 priorities, you have no priorities. Your priorities should be limited to 2 or 3, maximum. A maximum of 2 or 3 priorities. That, again, you can hold up at the end of your term here and talk about, and really be proud of. Things that you can point to and say, you know, I did this along with the team that I was working with. For me, making sure that there's strong democratic representation in the community of London North Centre, the community that I represent, is, if not at the top of the list, it's in the top 3. Want to make sure that the constituents that I represent have the ability to reach out and speak to me one-on-one. Is it always easy to set up a meeting? Well, I'm asked to be in 1,000 places at once sometimes. So it does often take a number of weeks in many cases, but sometimes it's just a matter of days to set up a meeting, depending on scheduling. But the point is, you sit down and you engage with the constituents that you represent. If it's not in a one-on-one meeting, take a phone call, email, whatever it might be. Get back to the people that email you. All of that is a priority that I've set out in terms of my work as a member of Parliament. Making sure that there's equal opportunity for all. Making sure that all of us in the society, whether we are able-bodied or otherwise, if we have intellectual challenges or otherwise, if we are rich or poor or in the middle class, all of us deserve opportunities. And so securing government investment for programs and for businesses in the community is a priority because of that. And the third priority that I have is dealing with the issue of child poverty. In London, there's 17% of our children in this city live under the poverty line, which is unacceptable and is so really determining in terms of the future prospects of those young people. If you're born into poverty, there's a very good chance you won't escape from it. So making sure that the community is aware of different initiatives and programs that they can access that will help them break out of poverty, things like the Canada Child Benefit. I'm not politicking here, by the way, but I'm trying to tell you of the different examples that, the different priorities, rather, that I've set out in my work, in my role as a member of Parliament. Notice that there's no more than that. There's 2 or 3 priorities that actually 3. There's 3 priorities that I've set out very clearly, and everything I do relates back to those. Now, in a given day, am I going to focus on something entirely different? Let's say meeting with the Students' Council. Absolutely, but that relates to engagement. Am I going to, if there's an issue relating to the environment in London or health concerns that constituents have, of course I'm going to sit down with those individuals or speak to them on the phone or have my office look into the challenges that they're facing. But at the end of the day, when I am through my role, whenever that is, as a member of Parliament, I want to look back and say, on those 3 key priorities, I can be proud. We've achieved a great deal I've achieved a great deal as a member of Parliament, more than that my team. I'm nothing without my office staff that helps me do the work that I need. Now, you don't have staff, so at least I don't think. I know that there's a USC team that helps administer things, and they play a very vital role here on campus. But don't worry, there's ways around that if you don't have the staffing resources. Nobody's asking you, and nobody's telling you to do that here. But making sure that you're always focused on those 2 or 3 priorities is absolutely critical. So that's the first point. The second point I would advise you on is know your file. Know everything that there is to do with your file. Actually, if I can just get a few people, I can see names around the table, but can you tell me your roles exactly? I've spoken to some social science reps. So can we just go around so I can understand the exact files? Beginning here, actually, with Andrea.
Hello. So my name's Andrea Eversley. I'm the medicine counselor. So I would sit on this council as well as on our Schulich Medicine Hippocratic Council is what it's called.
Very good. So we'll go. Yeah.
I'm Mac. I'm a social science counselor. So along with the other social science counselors, we represent our constituency here as well as hold positions on the social science council.
Okay. And I know these Alvin and Adam have chatted with social science, chaired social science. How many social science in the room, by the way? Okay. Okay, I've got to the social science guys. Go ahead, Frank. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I got it. So what do we have? We have social science, science, people from King's. What am I missing here?
Health science here.
Health science.
Health science. Here.
Okay.
We got dentistry here
Huron.
as well.
Dentistry. Okay.
Education.
Arts and music. Very good.
IV.
This is actually much more efficient than going around. We won't go around anymore. That was my. This is what happens when you think on the spot, and then people correct you. So no. But Calvin wants to say something. I'm not going to take it away from Calvin. Go ahead. What are you up to?
Is this working?
Yeah.
I didn't really have anything to say.
Oh,
But,
okay. You were looking at me like, don't take this opportunity away from me.
I was actually turning off the mic because hot
Oh,
mics.
okay. I
Hot mics
misread
freak
the
me out,
situation completely. All right, so now I have a better idea of the various issues that you're focused on, or the files, I guess, if you want to use political speak. Know your issues. And yeah, that sounds, again, just like the first point that I made here today about priorities. It sounds easy. It's really not. Okay, you have to know everything related to your role, to the issue that you're focused on. This is key in helping you achieve your priorities. What does this mean? Get immersed in your issue area. Know all the specifics. It's going to take you a long time, but spend the time reading. Spend the time getting to know the people that you think that you need to be networking with and meeting with, who will share with you the very fundamental points that you need to be aware of in order to be an effective advocate. All of that is absolutely crucial and vital. And here's another key point. If you don't know, ask. You know, I see members of parliament, and I love my colleagues, but I all too often see them, and I'm definitely not going to mention names, but there are friends of mine, in fact, who I've seen who are asked a question, and they don't know anything about the topic, but they don't want to come off as anything but smart. They want to present themselves as knowledgeable on the issue, and they'll say something. It's completely wrong, but they say it anyway because they don't want to seem out of it. They want to seem as if they know the issue, know the file, and come off as with a good reputation as a result. Okay, you can do that, but you're not living up to your responsibility. So if you don't know, ask. Have the courage to ask, whether it's asking your predecessor, asking someone who you might know other than your predecessor who could have the answer. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Don't hold back, because that's how you learn. And I see it, as I say, in my job. I've seen it when I was a faculty member here at the university. Perhaps it's what we're like as human beings. We don't want to be to seem as if we're the one in the room that does not know. But I can tell you that the smartest ones in the room are usually the ones that have it in them to actually admit that that they don't know a particular issue, and that they're humble enough to and modest enough to take the step. And in fact, I'll call it leadership, because it does require a certain leadership ability to go outside of your comfort zone and ask those questions. That will make you a better representative. Thirdly, show respect to the people that you represent. And there's various ways to make that happen. First of all, and I've touched on this already, but I can't emphasize it enough, make yourself available, either through meetings, one-on-one. If you get phone calls, return those phone calls. If you get emails, return those emails. And put yourself out there. Be open to a public consultation. I host these all the time on a range of issues. I've done public consultations on matters relating to defense, to the environment, to budget preparation for the 2016 budget and the 2017 budget, in which constituents had the opportunity to come and speak with me and share with me their priorities for what they would like to see the country's budget look like in terms of issue areas to focus on, whether it's health or the environmental spending, or what we should be doing in the economy. The budget as always gives you an idea of where the government is going and what the country is going to look like in coming years, because it establishes spending priorities. The point I'm making is go out and consult and open yourself up, whether it's in a public space like this, which, by the way, I always find is the most effective, because that's where you get true interaction. But we do live in 2017, and so if you think that hosting a Facebook Live is A, going to get you more people, or B, more efficient, or a combination of those two, then do that as well. I don't have to tell you, you folks know Facebook much better than I do. It's a very effective medium. So that might be one way to engage. The point is, put yourself out there. Don't hold back. You're in this role for a very particular reason. People have trusted you, and now it's time to show them respect back. Because if you don't, you're not only living up to your responsibilities, you're not helping make this campus better. You're not helping make this campus better if you're ignoring your constituents. The other point, and it relates to this, but it's a bit different. Always be prepared for meetings that you take or consultations that you carry out. That means reading as much as you can to prepare and doing everything else that you think might prepare you for anticipated questions. Yeah, and that's something else. Try and anticipate the questions that you might get so that you have answers. And if you don't have answers, be humble enough to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but I will get back to you. And then make sure you get back to them. Don't be that guy that says, yeah, we'll chat about that. And then you don't return the email or the phone call or whatever, or the question at the consultation, whatever the case might be. That's where you really let people down. But yeah, I can't emphasize that enough. Really respecting constituents is crucial to all this. My fourth point it relates to work ethic. If you're not, let me put it this way, if you're not tired at the end of the day, then you're doing the job wrong. You have to throw yourself into this work, but this does not mean that it comes to dominate every aspect of your life. Because if it does burn you out, then you're also not being a good representative. It's a very fine line. Actually, I was chatting about this at lunch with Landon and a few others. We, as Representatives, we need to make sure, sorry, I've forgotten your names already. It was Andrea and, and Juliana, we were chatting at lunch. We, as representatives, often make the mistake of throwing ourselves into the role entirely, and then you don't see family, or you don't see friends, or you don't, it really can negatively impact your work. So take the time to have a balance, but in this role, I'll speak about myself as a member of Parliament, but it does, I think the rule is generally applicable to what you're doing. You're as busy as you want to be in this job. You can put your feet up and your constituents won't really know about it, but eventually they will. So put yourself out there, work for your constituents and give it everything that you have. And at the end of the day, if you're tired, you are probably doing it right. And if you're relaxed, that means you're probably taking a break from a lot of hard work, which is more than fine. But if you're not serious about the job, then people will notice that. And then again, you're not living up to your role, and that makes for a less prosperous, not less prosperous, but a less beneficial experience for students on campus. So that's what I would share with you. But like I said, I wanted to keep it informal. So I'm glad to take any questions that you might have. Someone had asked me about best ways to carry out a public consultation, which I do have some ideas on. We can start with that if you like, or any question. I'm completely open. And if you want to yell at me about some government policy, we can do that too. I'll defend myself there. Yeah, go ahead, Kelvin.
You're trying to establish a
Oh, thanks.
during your day of government. How do you approach trying to establish a daily?
Yeah, so, well, I'm sure, I don't know if I shared my regimen, it would maybe be helpful and maybe not. So, my day starts with reading the Globe and Mail, the London Free Press, the National Post, and the Toronto Star, or the BBC News, depending on what my mood is like. Is that going to help you? Well, it's good to understand the world around you, but make sure you're reading the Gazette, I suppose. That would be something that you're, and get to know the media. Get to know, this does not mean that media are there to peddle your perspective, or they have a job to do, you have a job to do, but they're also providing a vital student service here on campus, and have been for many years. The Gazette is probably the most important student newspaper across the country, at least the most storied. Get to know what's in the news, get to know what students are talking about, get to know all of that. I think that should be part of your regimen. And then have some sort of format when it comes to approaching the day, whether it's meeting with students that you represent, or having a certain amount of time set aside for reading so that you're keeping up with all the issues relating to council priorities, your specific priorities as a representative within the council. I think those should be part of your daily regimen. Treat it as a full-time job, and so many of you do already, and that's more than commendable, especially you don't see a lot of young people giving that kind of commitment, not because they're not able to, but because you're young and you have, at this age, there's so many different things that you could be concerned with, but you're committing yourself to advocacy here. I think you have to treat it as a full-time job. What else you commit or what else you throw onto that list in terms of regimen is up to you, but I would say those should be really fundamental starting points. Yes, Erica. Yeah, there's various ways you could do it. The way I like to do a public consultation is you have to put out the invite, and social media is very, very, especially among young people, is a very good way to, put this up a bit. Social media is a very good way to engage with, not engage, get the word out really, so that people show up to your consultation. Now, if you have a consultation where only a few people showed up the first time, don't give up. Keep going. And word of mouth is very helpful. So people will, that have showed up will help you spread the message, hopefully for consultations that follow. But to go back to your question, the way I like to carry out the consultation is much like this. You have people that are coming in the room. I like to have a table that I sit at, and I'll have a few general questions for or general points that I like to, not questions, but points that I like to get across to the audience. Letting them know what I've been doing recently to advocate on their behalf, and other relevant issues that you think are important for them to know. And then making clear what this consultation is all about, the fact that you want to know about, Erica, tell me your program again. You're from health? Nursing. From, sorry? Nursing, okay. So letting them know what is going on. One way you could do it is, again, start off by talking about what's new in the nursing faculty, what the student body should be aware of, and then raising issues that are going to be relevant going into the future, and asking questions maybe on a PowerPoint slide as a basis for discussion, but they will quite often ask you questions that have nothing to do with your PowerPoint slide, which is fine too. Again, if you go back to what I said before, try and anticipate the questions that you might get so you have answers. But you might not anticipate the questions. So always, you're not there to speak, you're there to introduce things, but then your main focus should be taking notes and asking questions as engagement starts. So if you're running Erica, if you're running the consultation and you've opened things up to the floor, a point is made, ask more questions of that person, get further clarification, get interested in what they're saying, and note all of that. And then from there, after the consultation, save all of that. Make sure this allows you to get an idea of where people are at in terms of their thinking when it comes to nursing in this case, or social science, or whatever the case might be. And then put it online. Make sure that people know that you're open and transparent that way. Everybody appreciates that in the end. It shows that you take the values of those who showed up, not the values, but the perspective of those who showed up very seriously. But also you again, put yourself out there. You make clear that you're not only running a consultation, you're going to post the results of the consultation and let people know, okay, this is what people this is what students in the nursing faculty are thinking of at this moment. And then you can, of course, share that with school administration when and council, of course, when the need and possibility arises. So that's how I do it, if that's clear.
It's actually perfect, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Facebook Live is another way you could do it. I've never actually done a Facebook Live consultation. I'm thinking about doing it that way. And then I've seen them done, and what happens in those is that you should prepare yourselves for a different style of consultation, because when people are behind a computer screen, quite often they allow themselves to behave in ways that are not the most conducive to democracy, let's put it that way. But it is a way to increase engagement. You will get more people attending, I think, a Facebook Live and posting a comment or a question than they would, you know, let's say in the dead of winter in February, showing up to you know, in -20 weather to talk about issues relating to nursing. It's not as likely, but, you know, in the warmth of their own home, yeah, maybe they will participate. There's different, you should play with it, you know. I think Twitter is less popular than it once was, but you might want to post tweets saying, hey, I'm doing a consultation here on nursing issues for students, and then post it on Facebook, get the word out there. Do a public one, do a Facebook one as well, see what works best. There's no wrong answers here. You should have the freedom, I think, to experiment and see what works best. But at the end of the day, people will really respect you for at least engaging with the public. I've seen situations in the past where members of parliament did not engage, did not open themselves up, and it always comes back to you. Someone can disagree with you, but as long as they've had every opportunity to disagree, right, and you've heard them out, then they will respect you even more for it. It's where you really run into trouble and where you really fail as a representative is if you are not open to engagement. You won't meet with people who disagree with you. You won't return their phone calls or their emails, and you won't open up consultations because you're afraid of what they might say. Well, you're in the public business, right? You're in the you're in public life now, and so you have to put yourself into the public view and be willing to deal with difficult questions if they arise. So don't be afraid of that. If you're worried about taking it all on the chin, then have some of your fellow reps with you, right? You don't have to do everything on your own. Work as a team to make it happen, whatever works best. Again, I think you should, especially at this point, experiment and see what is the most successful approach to things. Yes, Violet. So after the consultation is done, what we do is post the results online, and then I will advocate on those issues. What often happens is, whether in the form of a newsletter that goes out to all constituents, I'll give an update on what was achieved, what is still being worked on. And what you'll find is the people who show up to one consultation are the people that show up to your second and third consultation, because they're the most engaged. And so it's very easy to update them there. And you might even see them around campus, and they might approach you and say, hey, that issue that I raised, you know, you're from King's, so whether it's you know, increasing something on King's campus, the visibility of King's at Western, let's say, what can King's student body to do, what can King's Students' Council do to make that happen? What's new on that? Well, you might be able to share it with them right on the spot, seeing them in the King's cafeteria or something like that. But at the very least, post it online and circulate the word that way. That way, and nobody can call you out at that point. You can't be challenged for not being open and transparent. Do everything you can on that front. Yeah. Does that help? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Mac.
So we talked a lot about promoting engagement, and I think you've done a great job in London at promoting and encouraging people to reach out to you.
Thanks.
Just something you've seen, like, what are the benefits you've seen from taking that first step and being the one to reach out? And have you seen a direct correlation between how much you promoted engagement and how much engagement you've actually seen?
Well, if you've driven around London, you might see my face on a bus, which I can tell you is very strange for me. You know, I can't tell you the number of times I pull up to a red light and I look to my right, and there's my face looking. It's very weird, but there's a reason that we decided to go not just with buses, but with the bus shelters. And if you've been to a London Knights or London Lightning game, you'll see my video there. The aim of that is, I don't like the idea of self-promotion. It's not self-promotion for me. It is engagement. If I'm going to help people, which I think is my fundamental job, then people have to know how to get in touch. People have to be actively told, unfortunately, this is where we are in democracy, you have to tell people, feel free to get in touch. You know, I'm approachable. I want to hear from you. I want to sit down with you and hear the issues that matter. If you have concerns, let me know about them. I'm here to help. I'm here to advocate. And ever since we started that whole campaign, which has been going on for quite a while now, with the shelters and the buses and the like, there's been a huge increase in the number of people seeking our resources in I won't say resources, but our help in the office. It's been very dramatic. At the beginning, I mean, I was getting a bit frustrated because I would see people out and they would say, well, I don't know, are you available to sit down with me? If I come to your office, will you talk to me? Things like this. So, of course, the answer is I do want to sit down with you. I do want to advocate for you. I'm glad to hear you out. I'm glad to have a conversation with you. Here's my card, but then you wouldn't hear back because maybe there was still some hesitance because politics all too often has functioned in a way that is top-down. Well, if you want to represent people, then you've got to be with the people, right? On the ground with them, meeting with them in their community spaces, in their council chambers, wherever the place might be. But they have to, sometimes you have to, bring them with you and tell them, get in touch. So if you, I don't know how you have it, Mac, do you have a Facebook page or a Twitter page or something like that? There you go. So I would say if you haven't done, USC has always been very good at reaching out to the student body, but if you haven't done an approach, haven't done it yet so that you are actively telling people, get in touch with us, we want to hear from you, don't hesitate, we're open, we're anxious to engage. You have to try that. You have to really engage, have to carry that out because that, and the more you say it, the more they will, you can't just say it once, right? It's all about touches. You put the message out there once, okay, people will see it, maybe they won't, but if you keep saying it, they will definitely see it, but there's a fine line here. You don't want to be annoying, right? If you say it too much, right, then you, it's just, it comes off as insincere. But if you're mixing that message with other examples of the advocacy that you are doing and other relevant issues that you think students should be aware of, then you'll get that response that you're looking for. Now, it makes you much busier. It'll be difficult to juggle all the meetings and whether it's one-on-one meetings or phone calls or getting back to the increased number of emails. Yeah, it's going to be more difficult, but you ran for the role, right? So you wanted this job, and that's what the job requires. So, at least from my perspective. Okay. Sure. Jared. Jesus. Okay.
You spoke to this a little bit in your initial speech, but how it's tough to find the fine line between working too much and not working enough, sort of. So, is there anything in particular you do in order to sort of release or in order to keep that work-life balance?
Yeah. So I follow the Prime Minister's advice on this, and his advice is very straightforward. Eat right, exercise, and make sure you get adequate sleep. Those are the three rules that the Prime Minister has set for MPs. Rules. This is his advice on how we should. Judging on how busy he is, I'm not sure where he finds time to sleep. To be honest with you, but this is what he's emphasized, and I go for that too. Try and get. For me, it's 7 hours. Sometimes, quite often actually, it's less than that. But I aim for 7 hours of sleep. Exercise is very important. Whether it's team sports that you're intramurals, or if you're more of an individual and you like to run, I don't know. You have to be healthy, and you have to eat healthy. There's a lot of not very good food on not just this campus, on any campus. Try and eat as healthy as you possibly can. It actually has an impact on how effective you are in your work. The more saturated fats you eat, the more salty foods, all that junk food stuff, it's going to hold you back. You're going to have real effects it's going to have a real effect on how you think, how you carry it, even your interactions. I'm not just quoting the various nutritional literature out there. It's, eat well and have a balance in exercise and sleep, and you're going to be a better person overall. And then spend time with the people around you. Don't let the job consume you to the point where it has taken you away from everybody that matters in your life, because then those people are going to be upset, which you'll hear about, and that will stress you out, and then you're not a good representative. So there's a lot of overlap in those between throwing yourself in the job and being an effective MP, not an MP, but an effective representative. But I would say if you strive for a balance, you'll achieve it, and in the end, everybody's better off. Okay. All go. You, Landon?
Yeah, maybe just a quick one on advice for talking to the media.
Well, let's see here. Are you talking to the media in terms of what? Are you like how not to get in trouble with the media? Oh, okay. Everything has to go through the USC office. You have to clear your message with Landon. No.
Maybe to utilize the media to talk about.
Yeah.
Do you want to
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding with you. So I think that it's vital. You have to have a rapport with the press. I'm not going to be partisan here, but we've had governments in the past, and I'm not just talking about Mr. Harper's administration, but there's been governments throughout Canadian history that have had a very adversarial relationship with the press. And if you ignore media, if you disrespect media, and if you show it that, if your actions illustrate the fact that you despise media, well, they're not going to respond in kind. They're not going to put out the message of engagement that you want to get out there. You have to have, and all the various things that USC is doing as a whole. You need I won't say cooperative relationship, because there has to be a clear line drawn between the work of the press and the work of elected representatives. But media can be very helpful in getting the message out in terms of, if there's a student consultation that USC is holding, you want them to publish that. You want them to publish the actual a news article on the actual consultation, what was raised, what was said. I think the executive in particular should open themselves up, and I think they have, just judging on how previous administrations have operated, to interviews, one-on-ones. The president should be, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do here, but I think the president should sit down on a regular basis, maybe once at the beginning of the year, once at the end of the year, maybe at the midpoint, for a one-on-one with the editorial board. And do media, are they going to ask you difficult questions? Are they going to put you, might they try to trap you at certain moments? All of that is possible, but democracy is possible, and democracy is messy, and you have to anticipate those kinds of situations. But by and large, I think my experience is if you show respect of the media, they will ask you fair questions. And that's all you can ask for, just fair questions. You're never going to, you should not, as elected representatives, be hoping for a situation where media is just asking you softball questions, because they're not serving their role there. And if, frankly, you don't want to make it too easy on yourself, then the job ceases to be fun. You want to have challenges that you overcome, whether it's, getting a difficult question and answering it very well. There's a feeling of satisfaction that comes from that. But also, if you are only getting softball questions, your constituents see through that. People are very, very smart, and that includes, of course, students. They will see through that in a second and not appreciate it. Right, so definitely have a good rapport with the press. Okay, all good? Great. I really enjoyed it, everybody. Thanks very much for the invitation.
Well, thanks a lot, Peter. I'm sure you have quite a bit of Western gear, but I love what's for you from the Purple Store. Here is a little gift for you. So
this
thanks.
is not expected. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for coming.
I'm glad to. I'll let you guys get back to your meeting, but I'm glad to come back in the course of the year if you want me to, share any other insights. But that's my experience on the job. But you guys have really stepped up as young leaders in this community at Western and beyond, I'm sure. So keep it going. And again, my office is, I didn't say this, but I should. My office is always open to this USC and to any student representative that wants to engage on issues relating to your advocacy here at Western, or if you have something else that you want to talk to me about. Climate change, healthcare, Canada's role in the world, all of that. You know, I'm always glad to hear from young people. I say this as I'm heading out here. So take care, everybody, and enjoy your afternoon.
All right. With that, we will move back into the agenda. We are now on motion 3. Whoop. Yep. Come on, you. All right. So the vote of confidence bylaw 2 amendment. Whereas currently any candidate running for a position in the USC election will have the position acclaimed if the exact amount or a lesser number of candidates ran. Whereas the student body cannot cast a vote for or against the acclaimed candidate. Whereas the candidate might face criticism based on legitimacy. Be it resolved that council task the secretary treasurer to bring an amended version of bylaw 2, elections procedures, to council by the September meeting with the following amendments, at which point council will vote on the amendments. 1. When a position that is typically voted on by students is about to be acclaimed, a vote of confidence will take place for the candidate with the following polling options. A, yes, I believe this candidate should assume the role. B, no, I do not believe this candidate should assume the role. 2, if the candidate receives 50% plus 1 of, receives 50% plus 1 vote of their eligible voting constituency turnout voting no for the vote of confidence, then the candidate will not assume the position and the position will remain unfilled and the procedure for a vacant position will commence. This is moved by Councillor Kimji. Do I have a seconder? Yep. Sorry, Councillor. And Councillor Kimji, go ahead.
Test. Adam Kimji, Social Science Counselor. So with social science, and I believe some other faculties also experienced this past election, we didn't really have enough people running, so the positions were acclaimed. The problem with that is the student body didn't actually get to vote. In Social Science Council, I'm not sure how the other faculties dealt with this, but to mitigate this issue, we had a little impromptu type of, how do I phrase it? Essentially, the other counselors that were still on council voted individually to put us into council. If there's a word for this, I'm blanking out. So essentially, this would ensure that if a position was going acclaimed, it would go into a vote of confidence instead of just being acclaimed, so the actual student body could vote, opposed to perhaps other supplemental procedures that maybe each faculty might have, such as the one social science had. Yep. And also, just want to make this very clear, this is the motion to have the secretary treasurer make an amended version of a bylaw 2. It's not the actual procedure being changed, if that makes sense. Okay.
Okay, and seconder?
Matt Grenier, Social Science. I just wanted to speak and give an example of the importance of something like this. There was an incident last year at Guelph University. Their president position was actually going to be acclaimed until it was revealed that this, the sole candidate had actually served 8 months in prison for a series of breaking and enterings. And it was actually breaking and enterings on student residence campuses, like on campus. Incidents like this do happen, and people who are not qualified for the job do show up. So it's kind of just important to actually have a safety factor, like a backup in this.
Okay. Councilor Syed.
Hello. So Homicide King's counselor. So I am speaking against the motion because I personally think that USC involvement is already kind of pretty low, and I think this is just putting on another barrier for people who want to do it. Because I know some people do go for positions that are just acclaimed because they're afraid to, speak out and run for elections. And I think having another vote of confidence would kind of create another barrier for those people. Also, also, when you guys are talking about the University of Guelph, I think there are procedures in line where we can talk to governance officers involved with USC if there is something sketchy going on with the candidates running. So I am speaking for the motion because I just personally feel that this is kind of just doesn't creates a barrier for people getting involved in USC.
Jared Foreman, social science counselor. I just want to speak against the motion as it's currently written. I just want to reiterate what my fellow counselor has said, in that I think we need to focus on USC engagement as it currently is, considering we didn't even get a quarter of registered students to vote in our last election. I don't think it's beneficial to inundate the student body with countless votes that, quite frankly, they don't care about. However, I do like the idea of having sort of votes of confidence within the elected bodies as they currently, like what we did with the social science counselors. So I would motion to amend the motion so to change it that the vote of confidence would take place within the elected councils.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Oh, wait. Sorry.
Point of information.
Go ahead.
Something of that matter would go within each faculty council's terms or bylaws, or however they're governed. So that's not really within the scope of bylaw 2 to put that on them.
To check what I'm hearing, because obviously I'm not as familiar with your bylaws as with SOGS, would that mean that it's not within the power of the USC to compel that?
Yes.
Okay, so in that case, the amendment is out of order and I have to ignore it. Obviously, you can only enact things that are within the organization's power. This would evidently not be. Yeah, go ahead.
Councillor Uhas Nursing, I'm just going to speak against the motion again, how it's written right now, because I come from a faculty nursing extremely small, and the issue with having a vote of confidence for every single candidate is you could risk the chance of having zero representation, because I know nursing at least has not had a stable USC counselor for the past, I think, 2 or 3 years. Like, I'm the first stable counselor they've had in 3 years, and that means you have an entire school within Western that is not represented whatsoever on the USC, and I think that is kind of dangerous. One thing I did, I guess, want some point of information for is, although like in nursing, kinesiology, health studies, we are the exceptions in the sense that our association presidents do not sit at the USC table, would there, by amendment or some other act, would, because they are still elected through an official USC election, if they have a positive vote of confidence and their counselor position is vacant, would they be able to take that vacant position, or would we have to run through like another giant electoral process? Because again, with small faculties like ours, it is very hard to find people, like extremely hard.
I'll turn that question over to the executive.
So it's actually the choice of your faculty that you don't have the president sit as the representative. So they could take that seat and you could not elect a counselor. I was just wondering, though, with clarification, are you saying for the vote of, wait, no, never mind.
Okay. Yep.
Proxy for Kate Moran. So, yeah, and I'm also speaking against the motion as it stands, but I am in favor of the spirit of the motion. I think right now the issue that I'm seeing as to why I'm speaking against it is that currently, as it stands, I do not believe that the fail-safes right now, should someone be non-confidenced, is adequate enough for what to happen in the future. So again, just echoing what Nursing said earlier about vacancies. Having been on council last year, we actually had 2 health science vacancies that were never filled. And I know for a fact ex-president Riley Garneau has been trying, or was trying to fill it, and just never got filled. So that I can easily see being an ongoing issue. But speaking from a presidential perspective too, because this affects faculty presidents, to not have a faculty president or to have a faculty president be non-confident is a really big issue. And just speaking again from the music perspective, when we, Kyle Tang, current president, but he was acclaimed. So the procedure that we took within the Faculty Music Student Council was very hard to have it, because it was so full of semantics, because by USC he was recognized as the music counselor, but as like a president, do we still want him to be a president? Therefore, if he's not a president, is he still the counselor? So it got super confusing. That's why I think it should be regulated through USC, just so faculty presidents or faculty councils don't have to go through that process, because it was absolutely ridiculous, and it was like we had to meticulously write down point by point, if this doesn't happen, we lead to this, and if that doesn't happen, we lead to this, and it got super convoluted. So that's why I'm in favor of this happening, but we need to have all of that written out as it is and not just delegated to a vacancy.
Councillor Yee.
Councillor Yee, Science Councillor. I'm also speaking out against this motion in its current form. My reason for being against this is that I feel something like electoral reform and changing bylaw 2 should not just be going straight to the executive. I feel that it should be going through standing committee, should go through the government's finance committee. So I want to move to amend that not only this not just go to the secretary treasurer, but go to the government's finance standing committee. And also, instead of just focusing on one aspect of reform, I do feel that bylaw 2 could use some reforming and changing based on certain happenings in the last election. So I would amend this also just to say standing secretary, the government's finance standing committee do a review of bylaw 2 and bring forward suggested changes to it to the next council meeting.
Okay, to make sure I have heard you correctly and am correct about what you intend, so you are proposing an amendment to the motion to change it to essentially be it resolved that council task the governance and governance finance committee to review and propose amendments to bylaw 2. Would that be
Yes.
Would that be accurate?
Yep.
Okay, and you are presumably moving this amendment to a seconder? Yep. Do you want to say anything else as mover to the motion, or to the amendment rather? All right, then as seconder.
Point of information.
Yes.
Point of information.
Yeah.
Perhaps Elizabeth, you might be able to help me out here. But isn't this something that we already tasked the governance finance committee to do before the summer? Or anyone who may recall? To do a bylaw 2 review.
I'm seeing tentative nodding, but I obviously cannot comment further.
If that is true, I do withdraw the amendment.
Yeah. While that is being checked, I guess you can go ahead and motivate a seconder, and if it turns out to be true and you want to withdraw, go ahead. But for now, in case we do have to proceed with this, yes.
Jared Foreman, Social Science Counselor. Can we just change the amendment to table the current motion until the findings of that committee are released?
Yes, although if there is no such findings, then not. So has that been? Give us a moment. So instead, could just be that this motion is tabled until the review comes through from.
Just a question. So, are you asking to table the motion until we find what was tasked to them before?
Until the bylaw 2 review is complete.
So until the governance and finance has completed their review and presented. Yeah, it would be a different motion than the one that's on. It's on. But yes, if you want to move to table until that time, that would be permissible. Okay. You are so moved. Move. All right. Do I have a seconder for that? Oh, there we go. Do you want to say anything else as mover to that motion? A seconder? Yeah, go ahead.
Speaking against the motion to table this motion, I just feel that when we were speaking on the motion, there was a lot of sentiment against it, and I feel perhaps a call to question may reveal how council actually feels about the spirit altogether.
Mm-hmm. Any other speakers to the motion to table? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of tabling until the report from the committee comes back? Opposed? Noted abstentions? Okay, that fails. Next up, back to the main motion.
Oh, hello, this is Andrew, the chair of the board of directors. That's me. So I'm going to be speaking against this motion and more from a corporate side and just the organization as a whole. My biggest concern arises around the fact that if there was, because bylaw 2 also impacts the USC presidential election, if there was to be one slate running, and we have a vote of confidence, and that slate for some reason does not get the vote of confidence, I feel that with the transition process and everything else that goes on in the organization, it can kind of put our functionings into disarray. More so, I think that this needs to be studied a little bit more in depth, partly because I believe the USC kind of mirrors or tries to mirror a kind of a municipal body. And it's from my own understanding, I don't think that if somebody, you can have a vetting process and you can have basic requirements that, let's say somebody who is running needs to meet. Let's say they can't be bankrupt, just like the board of directors do, can't be bankrupt, can't have a criminal record and stuff like that. But past that, I don't know if it is permitted to, if there is one candidate running, to permit a vote of confidence to take place. And I think it needs to be studied a little bit more. It needs to be referred, as everybody the sentiments on the floor have suggested, to committee to study this a little bit further. And I think it's premature to vote on this motion as it stands. So that's my comment.
Okay. Any other? Oh, yes.
Proxy for Kyle Tang. So speaking against the main motion, a vote of non-confidence is typically something that we do when there's somebody incumbent in a position and they have demonstrated poor performance or any other grounds for council to say that this person is not fit for the role that they are in. Whereas when somebody has just been acclaimed for a role, they haven't demonstrated any performance on which you were to merit your confidence or determine whether or not they are fit for the position. And as Andrew just mentioned, we saw a couple of years back in a situation that some of the older councillors may remember, where a PVP slate was acclaimed and there was a motion debated to have a call to question, and our legal consult came back telling us that put us in a lot of trouble because of the HR issues implicated. And so in the case of a PVP slate, it may not even be implementable, if that's a word to do. And then with regards to other constituencies and other seats on council, I can see this turning into either A, just a rubber stamp that we, say, okay, this person can keep the seat they were acclaimed for, or B, an opportunity to pull out dirty laundry about a said individual who was acclaimed to a role and expose personal flaws or personal traits. And in essence, I really don't see how something like this could be implemented, or if it's even something that we should be interested in implementing.
Councillor Kimji.
Adam Kimji, Social Society President, Social Society Councillor. So in terms of this actual, I wish. Okay. So in terms of the actual motion, I'm noticing a lot of people are against it. If everyone. So everyone's mentioning engagement. In terms of the councillors, for example, we only had maybe 11 or 12 councillors for Social Society run, and we all got acclaimed. However, with the by-elections, or the little thing we had going on in the Social Society Council, we had a handful of actual people who ran, which makes you wonder if they had more time, or if there was an acclaimed position, maybe someone got kicked off, whatever. Perhaps the other people who didn't apply would have ran. So yeah, I just want to put that out there. So although I do notice maybe there is actually some corporate issue that might arise from this, so perhaps it is better if we motion to move this to the governance committee with a deadline for this to be addressed, though, to see, because if they can, if we had a bylaw to motion to get it reviewed and they can't even find it, I think maybe we should put this into the committee with a deadline for them to actually talk about it at some time in the near future.
Are you moving such a motion to refer?
I am moving such a motion.
Okay, so to refer to, do you have a deadline in mind?
Far enough that it's not. I would probably say maybe the fourth meeting.
Okay. Motions to refer are, except motions in debate, this would just be a motion to refer to that committee with instructions / a deadline. So that is principle. That's not a separate motion. It's committee, look at this motion, advise on, which is always acceptable generally always acceptable as a motion. Okay, so to fourth meeting, you said?
Yep.
Okay, so the motion is to refer this to the Governance and Finance Committee with instructions to give comments and advice on it by the 4th meeting of council. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Yep. Do you want to motivate any further as mover? And seconder, anything? Okay. Do I have speakers to this motion to refer? Yeah, Councilor Yee.
Point of information, did we ever find out if this was already done? Like if this vote already happened? Because I feel like that was just kind of mentioned and dropped.
Someone other than me? Yeah, it's still being checked. Aaron, I'll get you next. Sure.
Hi. I would just like to say, as I'm sure you guys saw in the Facebook group, the motion that will be coming up later, there's actually a plan to do a complete bylaw review. This is sort of like usually little bits and pieces get changed. And that's kind of why we're in the state we are right now, because it's this Frankenstein approach where like one little thing comes through. So if we are to just focus on like this little change or just bylaw 2, it will sort of be at the same time as we're actually like looking holistically at the organization and all of the governance. And that committee is planning to work on that. And so creating a timeline as well. We don't know the scope of that entire project, how long that will take. So it would put limitations on our abilities if there were to be a deadline for when bylaw 2 has to come back.
Okay. Any other speakers on the motion to refer? Yes, and then.
Massimo Peruzza, Arts President. Yeah, I'd like to speak against the motion to refer because it seems like something along these lines is already in the works and it's just unnecessary to do it multiple times.
Okay, Councilor Kimji.
Adam Kimji, social science counselor. Just in terms of that point, I think that the problem here is that the whole bureaucracy system, like you throw a motion into like the whole process, and then eventually I think it would just kind of get lost in the system. Like literally the fact that apparently a couple of meetings ago we had a motion that we're supposed to make bylaw 2, but the sheer fact that we don't even know if that's a thing, I think is like the inherent problem with that, which is why I think the deadline would have to still be implemented somehow. But like we haven't even passed that ad hoc committee yet, so I don't even know how that would work, right? So I just want to, say that.
I'd like to call to question.
Do I have a seconder to call the question? In favor? Opposed? Noted abstentions? All right, so question is called on referral. All those in favor of referral? Opposed? Noted abstentions? All right, referral fails, which moves us back to debate on the main motion. I've got you next.
Motion to call to question.
Okay. Seconder? Let's say Councilor Yee. All those in favor of calling the question on the motion? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? Okay. Then question is called. We will move to a vote. And polling is open. All right, it looks like I have everyone. I will just give it a moment. You have 3, 2, 1. All right. Okay, so motion 3 fails. Takes us now to motion 4, Western Forum. So USC launch online forum for students. Whereas students do not have a central website/portal to share information such as class reviews, various tips and tricks, and offer miscellaneous help to each other. Whereas students have to rely on academic counseling and other official channels for help, and if those channels cannot help them, they are forced to rely on incredible channels such as Reddit, Wyconic, and various other websites that may facilitate the spread of misinformation and might provoke bullying. Whereas McMaster University has a website for students that claims the following: MacInsiders.com is the largest student-run online community for McMaster University students. Run entirely by students, the site features student views on campus life, advice and tips, plus discussion on thousands of topics. With 25,000 plus members, 400,000 plus discussions, 1,000 plus articles with tips and advice, and 10,000 plus course reviews, Mac Insiders has become the largest and most popular student-run resource in Canada. Be it resolved that Council task the Executive to determine the feasibility of establishing an online forum or portal similar to the concept of macinsiders.com for students at Western University, and bring the feasibility report and recommendations to Council by the September meeting, at which point Council will vote on the recommendations and any future actions necessary. This is moved by Councillor Kimji. Do I have a seconder? Yeah. Sorry, name?
Outside President Hussein Ali.
Thank you. Councillor Kimji, go ahead.
I think this motion pretty much speaks for itself, to be honest. I think right now we don't really have any one channel option for students. For people to find out which classes they should take, they really just ask like softs, friends, etc. We have Facebook pages, 2 or 3 of them actually, and it's kind of redundant because no one uses the search feature. And I think with this would be a little more better. We can have like stickies and stuff like that. Yeah, I hope you guys checked out macinsiders.com just to see how it would look. Yeah.
Okay, as seconder, go ahead.
No, nothing to say.
Okay, so next I have Councillor Yee.
So Councillor Yee, Science Councillor. I'm just speaking against this motion. The main reason behind motion 4 is the fact that we seem to already have things like this. We have Western sponsored Facebook groups which are monitored by paid Western staff members, right? Like shout out to Courtney Hearn and those people, because we have, you know, groups like this which students can post their own opinions unmonitored, right? There's obviously standards in terms of, you know, preventing bullying, preventing like racism, things like that. But students, for the most part, are free to speak on these, you know, groups however they feel. And just the logistics of this motion and even having the execs or, you know, look at the feasibility of it, I feel like if we set up something that is like a forum or like a portal, someone's going to have to monitor it. Someone's going to have to, you know, check it through the year to, you know, be actually employed or have this as their job. And I don't think that the USC as a body needs to take something on like this, because we don't have anybody to kind of facilitate that role if this is to become reality.
Okay, and right next. Down the line on this side are my first 4.
Withdrawn.
Okay, pass it down.
Hi, I'm Grace, Science Counselor. I just want to add that in terms of like just student forums and stuff like that, not only do we have Facebook, but like Science on its own like has something called SciWiki, and we like our focus is basically the same thing except like science focused. I don't know if other other constituencies have the same thing, but like maybe like we can look towards like those like the current options and like maybe putting it all together or something, but like not really like making something brand new.
Okay, and one more down the line.
Rakshid Gangreddy, Science Counselor. So as my previous counselors pointed out, this sort of thing would be subject to the same sort of vulnerabilities that Reddit and other incredible channels have. But on a different note, I think it's better for students to rely on official channels like academic counselors, just because they're more up to date on information and they're more accurate. Whereas having this sort of online student forum, especially one that's endorsed or somehow supported by the University Students' Council, gives it a source of false persona that it's more official, and that information on it that could be false or outdated might somehow throw students off in selecting such courses or like using tips from it. Whereas by going directly to the official channels, they will get the most up-to-date information.
Cute. Go ahead. Yep.
Susanna King's counselor. Just want to reiterate what you were saying there. Even in my experience as a soph, when students in first year especially approach us with these questions on how was this prof, how was this course, you know, tips and tricks for university life, you can only really go so far with that advice. I cannot tell you to take a class because I enjoyed it. If I say like every student is different in their own way and handles a workload a certain way. If courses have essays, things like that. So there's a really fine line between giving advice through student portals and student driven forums such as that, because every student is different and will have a different experience no matter what you say. So I think we should probably construct conversations like that in terms of, this was my experience. However, that might not be yours. So, use your own discretion in making those types of decisions like that. So more formal ways of going about that is probably more beneficial.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Andrew, Chair of the Board of the USC Board of Directors. So I'm going to be speaking against the motion as well, and my reasoning is threefold. First and foremost, I think that to echo what some of the science counselors brought up, to write these forums and these posts, you need students to do that. And because students are actively already writing these posts, for example, in the Faculty of Science through SciWiki and other channels on campus, I feel that duplicating this on a more grand scale is kind of nonsensical and does not really make sense in my mind. Secondly, the amount of kind of a burden, you'd have to get a staff member or somebody paid or task one of the executives, most likely communications, to take this on into their portfolio and devote a significant amount of resources to duplicated work and kind of expend their energy on that when they could be doing a lot of other things for the organization. So organizationally, and I think in the corporate interest, I don't think that this is very, very feasible or important. And lastly, what did I want to say? Lastly, I think, from what somebody was mentioning, the fact that it needs to be up-to-date information if there is incorrect information or anything like that. I'm worried that because it's going to be associated with the USC and our organization as a whole, reputationally, if there is misinformation out there and something hasn't been validated or hasn't been vetted correctly, it can come back and have massive reputational damage to the organization. It's extreme, of course, but that possibility is there, and that's another reason why I'm very hesitant to approve anything like this. Thank you very much.
Jan Trinesius, Communications Officer. I'm also going to speak out against the motion for a very, very different reason than everyone has already said, and that is because we already have this service on the Western USC app. So there is a forum section where there's ride sharing, there's an ability to post, so anyone who signs up for the app has access to that. And like I said in my executive report, we're making a more genuine effort to get students onto the app and have them use that service and have them be able to get information and talk to each other and things like that. So this is happening already, so sorry.
Calvin Crutchlow, Ivy Counselor. Given that last point, that changes a bit of what I had to say, but I guess I'll still speak in favor of the spirit of the motion for a number of reasons. One being, we've mentioned Facebook. Facebook isn't very easily queryable or well organized. It's more of like a timeline of what's going on, and data knowledge isn't really stored very accurately there. Obviously you can search, but it's not the most easy thing. In addition, anecdotally, I've been able to find a wealth of past knowledge, and we've mentioned there are great resources such as SOFs and senior students. However, that's only one perspective, and having more knowledge is always a better thing for students. In terms of this being a feasibility investigation, I think you would want to also consider integrating things such as the Science Wiki into a platform where if there's already work being done on gathering knowledge, that it all be put together, and as part of a motion being to investigate feasibility, that would be great. And also I think we should really, if this is already present, then that's awesome, but in terms of the spirit of the motion too here, having an unofficial alternate source of information rather than the administration, I think is very important, and especially one that's as credible in the sense of being very highly structured as the administration, because obviously the administration has views that they take that are different from students, and having it be moderated by students or something of that nature would be excellent. And lastly, I don't think the burden of time should be considered here if you're one who feels strongly that this is important, because ultimately we're all here to put in time for things that we feel are important. But if you don't, then that's 100% valid as well.
Thank you. And next up, I have, sorry, I can't see your name tag, your placard. Thank you. Okay. Next up. Yep.
Wait, can I still speak?
Yep, you're next.
No, I'm speaking. Okay. Kind of echoing what Ivy President said, in the sense that I think it is important that we have an amalgamation of all of our current websites and platforms and whatnot, but it's hard to kind of change how structure is already going. So again, speaking from music, we do have a Facebook page that's kind of informal, but it seems to work the best because no one checked our website, whereas I know Arts and Humanities has a website that's actually frequently updated and is very nice. So what I think would work better perhaps is maybe finding a way to have more communication between the different platforms that are currently exist and having a way to kind of link them all together in like one nexus that can maybe then be linked to the app or the USC page as it currently stands, because right now the only time that other councils link to each other are like some events, and even then like not all of them that have cooperation between different councils. So if there's a way to like really kind of enforce the one mentality that we're all in this together, even though we might represent different groups of students, I think that would be a more realistic thing that we can get done. So whereas it's not one website being run by a few people, it's all of us contributing, and that being like links and whatnot being present and available through all of our different social media platforms.
Thank you. Yes.
Erica, U.S. Nursing Counselor. I'm just going to speak against this motion because of experience we've noticed within the Faculty of Nursing. So we tried launching, again, a student-based platform to give tips on classes, like electives and whatnot. And this was 2 years ago, and this is coming from the academic counselor for my faculty, because we did try launching something like this year, and 2 years ago it completely backfired. Senior students did give advice to the lower year students, and you know, the younger students, like especially first years, not being able to entirely sometimes distinguish what's an official platform, what's an unofficial platform, they took that advice to heart and ended up getting into a lot of conflicts with not enjoying their classes, having complaints about classes and different things that came off of that platform with the academic counselor. So what we did do in turn was we do have official channels brought through our academic counselor, through our faculty, rather than through the USC. That way students, again, have that opportunity, because I do agree with the spirit of it is having students able to share insight on the courses and like on the programs. But at the same time, you have to understand that it's a huge liability if someone takes this advice to heart and ends up in a massive conflict because of it.
Thank you. And
Lucy Watson, Health Sci Counselor. I would like to speak against the motion, but largely support the idea, the spirit. So basically, I don't think this is something that necessarily USC as itself needs to govern or do or put its resources to. I think if it's a project that if Counselor Kimji wants to initiate on his own or something like that, or start a club to kind of put it together. Mac Insiders is an awesome website. It's a great resource, and I think it'd be cool to amalgamate all the information and resources we have on Facebook to that. But like I said, I don't think it's necessarily something that we as USC need to put forth our resources and time to. And yeah, if people want to put that together as their own initiative, I think that would be awesome, but not for USC necessarily.
and yes. You're on the back.
Yeah, so don't read my name tag. Dylan Matthews here on President. I just want to speak against this motion from a pragmatic point of view. I think my big worry, as many counselors and my fellow colleagues have said, is that if the USC was to pursue this or were to pursue this, if we amplify everything, then we might not hear anything in terms of our students, so that might create a greater rift when it comes to disengaging our students. I do agree that the spirit of it, I applaud it. And I think the better way to do it is to localize it, have it within the respective councils, see how that flourishes within those respective councils, let it grow organically, and then we can approach this issue in a few years once we have more kind of data. It's just a very big step to take, and I don't think I'm confident to take that risk. Thank you.
President.
President Sharaba, I would like to, and I think this has been done multiple times, but speak again in favor of the spirit of the motion. Thank you, Adam, for bringing this up. I do think that it's important that we talk about student feedback. And I think a better way of looking for the implementation of this is, like Dylan said, to go through your faculties, have conversations with your VP communications, and let them bring that to a roundtable with Jana, and then they could all discuss best practices to do this sort of thing. But again, it's just hard for us to say, yeah, let's do this when we're already trying something and it's not working that well. So maybe if there's buy-in from all separate faculties, that'd be helpful. So I'd like to motion to call the question.
Okay. And seconding? All right. Sorry, you're proxying for President Tang? All right. All those in favor of calling the question? Opposed? Noted abstentions? Sorry, is that abstention or? Okay. Well, question is called. We will move to the vote. One moment, and it's open. All right, it looks like that is everyone. One last chance. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, motion fails. That takes us to motion 5. So, council meeting awareness on Facebook and Twitter. Whereas the USC's social media accounts, specifically the Facebook and Twitter accounts, have rarely notified students of when council meetings are happening and or any meeting that have already happened, whereas the average length of council meeting, of minutes of council meetings is often 10 plus pages long, whereas the average student is quite busy and could easily forget to stay up to date on council business, especially the entire minutes, and thus could be uninformed about potential actions that affect them, whereas 1 or 2 page summarized meetings have recently been utilized, example appendix number 1, hereafter referred to as the council meeting summary, in addition to the regular procedure of recording minutes. However, both documents are exclusively posted to the USC Council website without mention on any social media accounts of the USC, whereas the average student rarely visits the USC's website, but rather visits social media websites more often. Be it resolved that Council task the Secretary-Treasurer pardon me, to bring an amended version of the communication officer's roles and responsibilities or equivalent to include the mandatory posting of the council meeting summary when it becomes available to the Facebook and Twitter accounts of the USC within 2 days of the document becoming available by the September meeting of council, at which point council will vote on the amendments. Be it further resolved that the amended roles and responsibilities or equivalent of the communication officer at the September meeting of council include the mandatory posting of when council meetings that are open to the public are supposed to take place to the Facebook and Twitter accounts of the USC at least 7 days prior to the scheduled meeting. This is moved by Councillor Kimji. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, yep. Councillor Kimji, go ahead.
Adam Kimji, social science. Yeah, so this motion, so when I note, my constituents were asking like, oh, I didn't know you had a meeting. Every single time I had a meeting, which I guess has been 2 now. So after the last meeting, last like 7 hours, and no one knew anything about it. No one knew that any of the motion that passed, anything like that. So I was like, okay, maybe you just skipped out on it or something. So I looked through the Facebook page, kept scrolling and scrolling. This goes back like years. We don't actually mention any of the meetings that take place or that have happened, except the major one, which is like the state of the USC. Perhaps sometimes the AGM. But like this meeting will not be posted on the USC page. It hasn't been posted on the USC page. It's just not a thing. However, Elizabeth does write a very short summary, a summarized minutes, which if you're reading the PDF version, it's followed right after of how it looks like. It's like a really summarized version. Just like having that posted to, I think the Facebook page, the Twitter, I think that'd be great for students, so at least they know like that there's a motion that was made about this, what happened about it, anything that would really impact them, because right now, if something affects someone, they usually just hear about it through the Gazette, or their friends just talk about it casually, maybe hearing it from the Gazette or wherever they heard it from. But then if they try doing research, they don't really know about it unless they go through the USC website, which I want to say most people don't go on the USC website unless they're trying to find something in particular, which even then is kind of hard to find. But that's a whole other issue. So yeah, this would be kind of just making the Facebook more relevant in terms of our actual council meetings instead of just having events on there.
All right. And a seconder.
I do agree that engagement, especially with the public, is really important because I believe one of my fellow councilors mentioned earlier that about less than a quarter of our eligible voting population actually came out and voted. So I guess getting the university students involved is really, really important. The only thing I'm a little uncertain about is, has the communications officer been kind of consulted or briefed on this motion prior to it being sent, or is this going to just happen like right now?
I'll refer that question to the, a further question to the mover.
I did mention this to Jana once, I believe, the summarized motions one, but not fully in depth. The reason I kind of wanted it to be in part of the roles and responsibilities, mainly because like even if Jana says she'll do it, which I'm sure she will, just for the sake, like I'm sure she will, like, if she wants to do it, right? If she promises to do it, it's great, right? However, if it's not in the roles and responsibilities, the successor next year might not do it, right? And then what happens then, right? So I think just having this like in the actual roles and responsibilities, or somewhere where it's actually written down that somebody does this, I think it kind of has to be done, because I think it would be one of those things that kind of just slips through the cracks and you just like forget to post it or something. I think that's why it kind of has to go through the actual roles and responsibilities. So I mean, Jana could speak more to it in terms of that, but that's why I kind of made it into roles and responsibilities. Yeah.
All right. And yep.
Massimo Peruzza, Arts President. I'm in favor of this motion. I think anything that gets the general student population more involved and makes the USC easier to access is better. I just don't know if it's necessary to task the Secretary Treasurer to bring an amended, or can we just pass an amendment to the Communications Officer's roles and responsibilities now?
My belief is it would require precise wording, but I'm going to turn to someone else to ask if I'm correct about that. Yeah.
Andrew, Chair of the Board of the USC. I would like to remind counselors that a change to somebody's job description falls under the purview of human resources. It's my belief that we can't just change and amend job descriptions that people were hired on willy-nilly here on council floor and move things. Furthermore, I think that social media aspect and monitoring those accounts and controlling those accounts fall under the purview of the communications officer currently as it stands. And as a result, I don't think that we actually have the jurisdiction or right from an HR perspective, from a corporate perspective, to amend her or task the Secretary Treasurer to amend another executive's rights and responsibilities as it stands. Furthermore, to speak to Councillor Kim G's comment about contractually obligating the communications officer to kind of do these responsibilities, the executive is technically elected and they do not sign contracts as employees of the organization. So you can kind of put it in theory and kind of in the spirit of they should do it. And I'm sure Jana will speak further on her initiatives that she planned on accomplishing as communications officer. And I think, if I remember correctly, some of the stuff that you are talking about is actually included in her vision for what her role is going to be this year. So for that reason, I'm speaking against this motion, because I don't think that this is under the purview of council to discuss.
Janet Cherneskis, Communications Officer. While I wholeheartedly agree with the spirit of this motion, which is why I included it in my platform as one of my main components, because I think that council does need to be more promoted to the wider student body, I am going to speak out against this motion just because of the thing with student engagement, especially on social media, is that the one thing you don't want to do is put it in a box. engaging students on these platforms is it needs to remain flexible because we don't always know what works. And it's a trial and error. So say we post an infographic and it gets 2 likes, we know that that's not gonna get the traction that we need to promote council. So we might do a video. Whatever we need to do to engage students, we're willing to take that step, but to put it in a box and say that we need to post a summary that looks like this, it really does put our ability to get that engagement piece together at risk. And for that reason, yeah, I'm speaking against the motion.
Thank you. Next up. Yep. Okay. Well, right next to you. Sorry. I skipped Toby. I apologize.
Be super quick because that was mostly what I had to say. But I also speak out very heavily against this motion, and I also want to heavily discourage this body of the organization from putting in specific things for the executive to do, not because we don't want to do them, but first of all, you have to think about the timeliness of these decisions that you're making. A decision that you make now will not necessarily resonate for the next 5 executives, and it may not work for the next 5 executives, but if they're mandated to do it, then that's something that they'll have to come back to this body or like find another way to change their job description. Furthermore, I don't think it is within the purview of this body to rewrite job descriptions. I think that's something that should be left to professionals, and that's why we hire people from human resources that have degrees in this sort of thing to ensure that the job descriptions that they're giving people are sound and correct and give the people the autonomy to do their job. At the end of the day, we can all agree that student engagement is an important thing, and that's why the why of this is great, but I think there is another how, and specifically mandating that this is how we have to go about it, I think is the wrong move, so I speak heavily against this motion.
All right, and yeah, go ahead.
Proxy for Tang. Speaking in favor of the motion, I do really like the idea. I do like the idea of making these council meeting summaries more accessible and bring them to the forefront of the student interface with our online presence. However, as been mentioned, I don't think that the way of implementing this idea is the best way to do it. I would recommend amending this to be a standing resolution of council that all meetings of council be summarized into easy to absorb council meeting summaries and sharing them on social media. I think that'd be a much more simple way to implement it.
Are you proposing that amendment?
I was hoping to get actually some input from the executive to see if this is a agreeable way to implement it.
I'm going to say that's a point of information directed towards the executive about that, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess answering that question, Toby and I were really excited when we were creating our platform to run, that we include post-USC meeting video coverages. So we're excited to introduce kind of what we were thinking for 1 to 2 to 3 minute videos after each USC meeting, highlighting what we talked about. So I guess a little bit of what's incorporated in this motion was kind of why we created the video idea that's actually on our platform. So we will be, I think, doing what you said, or no?
Then in that case, can I move to amend the motion to keep it very general, very simple, just standing resolution that after every meeting of council, the executive publish a debrief on social media. And that could be in the form of whatever the executive wishes to use, and that way it'll be consistent from year to year, but leaves the executive the room to decide how they want to do it.
Okay, so just to make sure that I am hearing your proposal correctly, so the proposal is to amend to change the be it resolved and be it further resolved clauses to read, it be adopted as a standing resolution of council that the executive shall publish a brief summary of all council meetings after the meeting has concluded. Does that sound correct?
In a form as the executive deems fit, if you want to add that as well.
If you wish.
And expiring in perpetuity, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yep. Are you seconding, or?
Can I add further to that?
You would have to suggest to avoid a subsidiary amendment, suggest it to the mover first.
Yes, because I think that's actually also in the spirit of the motion. So to also add an update before the meeting to student membership or student body.
Like, and also update about date and time of meetings.
Yes.
Okay.
Adam, would that also be in the spirit of the motion?
Okay. Sorry, are you seconding or? Again, I would suggest suggesting it to the movers before we second and.
Give a point of information.
Yes.
I would just like to ask, I guess directed generally toward the executives, if, I don't know about how things worked last year, but I take it that when our stance on the fall reading week was discussed, that it was keeping relatively private, just not to get people excited or get anything moving too quickly. So perhaps if there was any like information sensitive things that we would need to like add into there or something, or if that we'd need to be cautious of.
I believe that would just be for in-camera matters.
Yeah, I would keep this as high level as possible, and that's a very good point, and I completely agree, but that's something that we'll make sure that we do as this goes on, and just like making this around general awareness for council meetings is probably the right way to go with this.
Do you mind if I just iterate the final wording of my amendment?
Yes, go ahead.
So amend the motion as it stands to remove all the be it resolved clauses and rather say be it resolved that it be a standing resolution of council in perpetuity that in advance of every council meeting, a announcement would be posted to social media, and following the meeting, a debrief also be posted to social media, both of which can be in the form the executive deems fit.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Yep. Do you want to motivate any further as mover of the amendment? And do you want to motivate a seconder? Nope. Do I have any other speakers to the amendment? Yes, go ahead.
Working.
There you go.
Victoria Barossa, Science Counselor. I just want to maybe direct this to Jana, since she mentioned before kind of overloading social media and how that might impact our reach. I just wanted to kind of get your opinion on what you feel about this amendment and how you feel it'll impact the USC.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. It's tough to gauge, especially when the school year hits. That's really when the big social media push comes, and that's when the schedule gets really hectic. But I think we're all in agreement that this is a priority for everyone to have council get a little bit more exposure, especially on the USC social media pages, and that we need to be supporting council's efforts and the work that you guys do. So in terms of, you know, yes, I am nervous about overloading the schedule, but this is a priority for my portfolio for the year. So I don't see it being an issue, especially if we time it right, and you know, having a debrief after the meeting I see a lot of value in that, and a very student-facing value. So I think it would be just fine.
Okay. Next up, I have. Yep. Yep.
Grade middle science counselor. I'd like to call the question.
On the amendment? Okay.
Yeah.
Do I have a seconder to call the question on the amendment? Several people. Let's say Councilor Kimji. All those in favor of calling the question on the amendment? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? Okay, question is called on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? Okay, that takes us back to the speakers list for the main motion. Go ahead. Okay. Do I have any other? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Councilor Yee.
Call the question, the motion.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Also, Councilor Kimji. All those in favor of calling the question? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? Okay, question is called. So that takes us to the vote on motion 5 as amended. Any moment now. There we go. All right. Again, looks like I have everyone going once, going twice, gone. Okay, motion carries as amended. That takes us now to motion 5. Motion 6, I know how numbers are. I've been in arts and humanities too long, I forgot how to count. So increase the plants in the UCC. Whereas, helps if I go to the right slide, there we go. Whereas the UCC lacks any potted or wall plants, whereas Plant Life Indoors has been researched thoroughly and been proven to increase student performance in the classroom, Appendix 1, 2, and 11, and increase productivity and reduce stress in windowless environments, Appendix 3. Whereas there are many schools that have Plant Life Indoors, just to name a few, McMaster University, Appendix 4, University of Guelph Humber, Appendix 5, University of Ottawa, Appendix 6, Queen's University, Appendix 7 and 8, University of Waterloo, Appendix 9, and Wilfrid Laurier University, Appendix 10. Be resolved that Council task the Executive to determine the feasibility of implementing a living wall and or potted plants inside the UCC and present Council with the feasibility report and recommendation on future action by the September meeting, at which point Council will vote on the recommendations and any future actions necessary. This is moved by Councillor Kimji. Do I have a seconder? Yep. Councillor Kimji, go ahead.
Adam Kimji, social science. Yeah, so I was talking to people. They said they wanted plants, and I think I know I kind of laughed too when people told me this, but I mean people asked for it. I researched it. Go for the questions. I don't know. Yeah.
As seconder.
This is more just a general point of information. So I did do some researching into Ottawa. I know you had on this list, and basically their living plant wall works like a giant irrigation system that also provides heat and cooling to the entire building. And there are also like schools on this list that just basically have little cute house plants. Like, just to clarify, like how big of a project were you thinking? Were you thinking like closer to you, Ottawa, or like closer to house plants?
Okay. This is not going to be like waterfalls and lavish lifestyle or whatever that saying was, but it's you know whatever plant life I think the executive deems fit or acceptable in the UCC. I'm gonna give them the yeah okay.
Okay. So next up, yeah.
Hello. Andrew, Chair of the USC Board of Directors. So I have some questions, some comments. First and foremost, so I'm going to be speaking against this motion for a number of reasons. I took the time to go through the appendices that were attached as a result of the research that was done by Councillor Kimji on this initiative. First and foremost, I'd like to address, one second. Appendices, 1, 2, and 11. So it says that Plant Life Indoors has been researched thoroughly and has been proven to increase student performance in the classroom. While the research that has been attached does point to this, I would like to point out that the USC and where this plant wall would be implemented would not be in a classroom. It would be in just the general space in the USC, either in the, I guess, where the food is or wherever the state, I don't know, whatever, where the tables are, not necessarily in the classroom. So I don't know how that research that was attached supports a plant wall in the USC. Just to comment on some of the things. So in Appendix 1, one second, it was about 384 students out of a study of 28,000 students. And once again, it was done in a classroom, and this wall will not be in a classroom. Appendix 2, it was surveyed at 360 elementary students in Australia. Once again, not very similar to the USC or Western. And then lastly, Appendix 11, it was about 60 pages of information about, and it was, I believe, just a chapter out of, I don't know, it seemed like a novel, about talking about stress with no metrics actually being assessed. So I'm quite concerned because I didn't really get much information out of that. And lastly, the other one was from a horticultural society with an inherent bias towards this type of stuff, and I, once again, didn't see the validity. First and second question, I have questions now for you, Councillor Kimji. Did you look into the fact that some space is owned by the university versus the USC, and how would you address this, and what kind of information do you need from both bodies to actually see if this is feasible? Next, what is, I really don't understand what the purpose of this is at the end of the day, because the main idea was the fact that it increases productivity and reduces stress. None of the research that has been attached has supported this. And I'm just concerned with what's the overall aim of this motion. And secondly, as an advocate for social science students, I would like to know how many social science students were consulted on this matter, so you could effectively advocate on their behalf.
Go ahead and respond.
So your first question, just to paraphrase, was the lack of appendices actually tied to the research was not about the
research wasn't relevant to
Right.
our organization.
Okay, so in terms of that, it's actually like borderline. It's really hard to find actually research of this to describe the situation. How do you describe a big room with a window, like a vaulted ceiling? I don't know how. It was really hard to find that. This was the closest information I could find. But just to kind of tie it though, people do study in the UCC. There are tables on the second floor, third floor. People study. You can put like a nice potted plant next to them. So I mean, kind of counts if you think of it as a classroom, a very big classroom, maybe like an open style classroom if you're thinking like that, right? So I wouldn't say it's too far fetched. Also, your reference about the chapter, it's actually not a chapter. I had to like email some guy from like a professor from the university, and he sent me that document. So it's not even like it was referenced in like a news article, but it wasn't actually published to like JSTOR or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that document was actually like a document he sent me that he wrote about it.
That's fine. My biggest concern with that was that it was a chapter where it was from.
Okay.
My biggest concern was the fact that it talks about stress in very loose terms and in anecdotes for 60 pages with no clear metric to assess how anything that you are bringing up with relation to plants reduces stress and enhances the well-being of students.
Right. So in terms of that, like I said, I think it'd be hard to research something like that.
Definitely
so
would.
I don't really know what you kind of expect. Like I don't know if you want me to call up universities and ask them to research this. I'm not sure if you want Western to go. Like I mean I don't know what you really want kind of research.
Oh, I really don't know. I just wanted more research that would be pertinent to kind of the USC. And just, I'm speaking from my own perspective. I tasking the executive to investigate the feasibility of something that, in my opinion, has not been well supported as a motion currently as it stands, is kind of, from a corporate perspective, is kind of a, once again, an ineffective use of resources. And I'd much rather, and I feel like the student body, I might be completely wrong, would much rather their executive focus on things that they were elected on instead of investigating different initiatives that really, in my opinion, have not been well supported. That being said, like I mentioned before, if you have consulted the faculty, your faculty and your constituents, and there's overwhelming need for this type of initiative, that's fine. I'm not against that, and I just want to hear your perspective on that as well.
Right. So I haven't actually got a chance to talk to all my constituents, unfortunately. Perhaps maybe do that then. But I feel like plants is such a negligible cost that it probably wouldn't. I think it would be more like resource demanding to like ask, like populate a survey, email everyone, maybe get like 1% of the constituency actually voting or replying to the survey, than to actually just buy maybe like $100 worth of plants or whatever you decide.
Yeah.
The plants.
I agree with you 100%. Plants are not that expensive. It's just that in the examples and in the exhibits that you attached, displaying very elaborate examples, like I believe Councillor, is it Yunush? Is it Yunush? Yeah, I think so. She showed the Ottawa example. These are quite elaborate displays, and they're quite beautiful. I was looking at the pictures, and they're quite extensive. I just don't see, if we're going to take a potted plant and buy it at Value Mart or something and put it on the floor, I don't see how that's going to really do anything, and that's kind of like a, pardon my French, half-ass solution to this problem.
Right, so that's why I did it as like a feasibility. So if you determine that a half-ass plant in the middle of the UCC is not feasible, I guess then it just doesn't go through.
Fair enough.
All right. Next I have Councillor Yee.
Well, just first off, I'd like to just say, Councillor Kimji, I think we all appreciate like the effort you put into this, so thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, no matter what the motion is or what is behind it, I think your intentions are there to help students, so that is something to be, I guess, acknowledged. But having said that, though, I am speaking out against this motion. primarily because I don't feel that there's any conclusive evidence there to state that we should be using any time or political capital or money towards getting plants for the UCC. I feel like there's a lot of logistical issues there that the executive wouldn't be able to even, with no matter how much time or effort they put into, actually work out, right? I mean, our buildings aren't, I guess, as open as some of the other ones. With you know, would you put it in the UCC atrium? Would you put it on some other level, right? If you do that, then where's the real benefit to students who study in the UCC? And so just on that point, I feel like just wasting that time and the energy to advocate, to kind of go through something that's ultimately, if passes, is going to be costly, right? It's not just buying a plant, it's maintaining that plant, it's getting people to take care of that plant, it's all those extra costs associated with it. But then even if we don't get this through, it's kind of like that wasted time and political capital that's there.
Thank you. And up next. Yep.
Zoe Engineering. So I'd like to speak against the motion. I do like plants, I'm a big fan of them, but as the motion is currently worded, I feel like it's super misleading because it says that plants would have been proven to increase student performance in the classroom, but if you look at Appendix 1, it says that there's no statistical evidence to suggest that there's any link. So while I do like plants, the way that it's currently worded is misleading, and that we shouldn't pass the motion as it's currently worded.
Thank you. Yep.
Alessi Zonta, King's Counselor. I will speak against the motion, but I really do enjoy the spirit of the motion. I just want to say for everyone to kind of keep in their minds, like, this type, again, going back to yesterday in our training session, most of you weren't here, but we did talk a lot about moving away from looking at the bottom line of things in terms of financial types of line, those kinds of lines. So moving away from looking entirely at maybe what the cost would be, but more of a balanced scorecard approach, and how this would, it's more of a qualitative study that would probably have to be done in terms of surveying and experiences and things like that. So you're not going to get a number of percentages, especially in this area. I think biospaces and things like that are definitely trending, and I have some friends who are in interior designing, and they are moving towards these types of concepts in open spaces. I'm not sure about the very basic research on this, but I do believe it's something that maybe if we go back, do some more surveying, ask our constituents if it's something that they really want, and if it's really going to benefit them in their studies and while they're in those spaces, kind of relaxing. And then maybe we could come back. I'm not doing any amendments or anything like that, but yeah. And I mean, we do live in the snow belt, and so when it is winter, it's nice to have things that are living. Just some food for that.
Massimo Peruzza, Arts President. I'd like to speak in favor of the spirit of the motion, but I don't think it's necessary to task the executive to come back with a report on this. If you plants and everything do go a long way to make a space a lot more welcoming and comfortable and things like that. Like if you look at the A&H atrium, there's a fake garden there, and it does help give students a relaxing place to study and things like that. I don't know about the logistics of having real plants. Maybe we could have a few fake plants or something.
Yeah, again, speaking in favor of the motion, especially if this does get traction and move along, I think a really good thing we could look into are air plants. So it's very, very minimal maintenance, at most a spritz of water, and that kind of just does its own thing. And you can just put it on a wall and it just sort of blossoms. So you don't really need to devote time into digging and getting soil. So I think in general, because I'm notoriously bad for keeping plants alive, that I have a fake plant in my room as well. So I think that's a really good approach, and perhaps cheaper as well, and we don't have to hire someone. So if we do start looking into this, I would suggest that's the route we go.
And pass to your right.
Keaton Olson, social science counselor. I'd like to propose an amendment to this motion to strike the second whereas clause, the entire thing, and just have it say, whereas subjectively to some people plants may look nice.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councilor Syed, do you want to say anything else as motivation?
Yeah, I just think this is what we're actually debating. We're getting kind of lost in the appendices, which are admittedly pretty, like, they're non sequiturs to the actual motion.
Okay. And as seconder, speakers to the amendment, I've got President.
I would like to speak against this motion. I don't think it adds anything to the motion as it stands. If there's appendices there, even if they don't have all the merit, they have some merit, and I think for that reason the appendices should still be attached. Whether you like this motion or not, I think deconstructing it to be weaker than it currently is should not be the right method of talking about this motion.
Any other speakers to the amendment? Yes.
Call to question.
There's no one else on the list, so we could. It would just take longer. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? All right. And the amendment rather is defeated. You're also up next for speaking to the main motion. Okay. Next up, I have Councilor Kimji.
Okay, so I'm noticing that perhaps maybe it would be a good idea to do a survey then. Could I get like a straw poll if a survey route would be better than just actually doing this one? No? Straw poll?
Straw poll council.
Say it again?
What? You straw polling council?
Yeah, I'm straw polled entire council. If you'd rather do a survey than just go with the current motion at state, like to like task the executive to make a survey, or I don't know, something along those routes.
Basically, so just informally,
to poll the constituency.
non-binding show of hands of those who would be interested in doing a survey as opposed to the current wording of the motion.
Like finding out the how much constituents would be down for this.
Yes.
And before we like get into any like straw polling or anything, because in here it says you want to task like the USC execs to do something about the whole plant thing. Have you consulted Enviro Western about anything? Because I know gardening is like right up their alley. So I mean, has anyone talked to Enviro Western about this to see maybe if they would be a better group to maybe task it to rather than the USC execs if this is something that council's interested in doing?
Do I respond to that?
Yes,
I have not, but I kind of figured that since the Enviro Western is underneath the executive, that they would figure it out and just task it around. Unless you were asking like beforehand, like just a sole idea about having plants. Because I figured it would be part of the feasibility report that they
like getting some like idea, like sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, like more like getting like ideas for like the feasibility of it, like who would maintain it, because I'm assuming out of all the people on Western to maintain plants, it would be Enviro Western.
Yeah,
like, they do a great job in their garden, like over there by the biodome.
Right, I totally figured that would be part of the feasibility, like if it would be like facilities management or whether it be the executive or environment. I totally figured it would be in the report. Yeah, so I didn't consult them.
Point of information?
Yeah.
I feel like this motion is worded as though it's something that the executive would implement or the USC would implement, but I feel like it's much more suited to be an advocacy point because I feel that the UCC isn't our space, and this would probably be something facilities management does, and so ultimately it would be us trying to lobby the university to invest in plants in the UCC, and perhaps we could contribute financially, but I really think that this motion could perhaps use much more discussion before it gets there, and so I would like to motion to refer to the advocacy committee and perhaps also in consultation with student experience.
Okay, so the motion is, you're moving to refer this motion to advocacy in consultation with students. Sorry, yes?
I would like information as well before we do that.
Okay. And we'll be
Grace,
back to that in a second.
Sorry?
Go ahead.
Grace, you were environmental Western, right? Do you have any input from your perspective? Sorry, put you on the spot, but she's here.
Hi, I'm Grace. I'm a science counselor, but apparently also the past EnviroWestern coordinator, which is why I was called on. So we do have we're all students, so like realistically we wouldn't be able to like maintain that, especially since during the summer, usually like they do a little bit of gardening, but like not too much. Personally, I don't garden. Like I tried to grow a plant and it died, but we do have like a gardening committee and like they do stuff in like the greenhouses and stuff. But yeah, I don't know about the current standing of EnviroWestern. I think Matt could definitely speak more on that. Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think if we were going to look at the feasibility, then EnviroWestern could be a part of it. But again, like EnviroWestern's underneath the executive and it's underneath the student programs portfolio. So if anything like that happens, then it would be part of it. But again, like EnviroWestern isn't facilities management, and they can't just install whatever they want. They're a body of students who care about the environment and work hard to encourage involvement in that way.
A further point of information. Yes, it would be Western and Facilities Management that ends up looking into this, but I really think we're getting into the weeds on this discussion, so let's try and stay.
Okay, so that takes us back to the motion to refer to advocacy in consultation with, sorry, was it student experience? Do I have a seconder for that motion to refer? Councillor, all right, do you want to motivate any further the motion to refer? All right, a seconder? There you go.
Oh, there we go. Okay, Jared Foreman, social science counselor. I'm going to speak against this amendment just because I don't feel like it's necessary to make a motion out of this. I think the idea would need to be explored more, just to look into ideas. I don't think it's necessary to have any sort of feasibility study or whatever else.
Okay. Speaking to the motion to refer? Can I respond to that? Sure. Well, first I've got someone else, then you're next.
Lucy Watson, health science counselor. I would just like to speak to this. So I guess I don't know if this necessarily needs to be like an amendment to the motion. It could just be a recommendation, but maybe that we just refer to Environment Western or whatever, that club, sorry. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact wording, but yeah, and just kind of say, hey, maybe we can look into this, and if this is something you're interested in, maybe you guys can then try to look into it more and devise a plan, because that seems like it's their specialty, something that they're passionate about and might be interested in doing as well. And then at that point, they can bring it up to USC, and then we can talk about it once we've had more research, people who know what they're doing, and then they can maybe devise a plan that might work, and then we can refer to facilities management about the upkeep of the plants and whatnot. So this could either be, I guess, I don't know if someone wants to make an amendment to the motion, or we could just kind of hey, Environment Western, do you guys want to try maybe putting plants in the USC and maybe think about how that might be feasible or something like that?
Okay, so next there, and then.
Just speaking to what Councillor Foreman, sorry, don't see your placards. Anyways, just speaking to what you said, just from experience from last year being on a standing standing committee on council, whereas we don't necessarily need to formally task a standing committee to do something, I would highly suggest that this is something that the advocacy standing committee looks at. So I believe, Frank, you are the head of advocacy this year, or my bad, who's it? Hey, what's up? Sorry about that. So I think it's a good idea to have that as you're deciding which things to work towards. Last year, though, I do remember that I was on experience and we were tasked with looking into CHRW, so it is possible to formally task someone. But I think in this case, it's better off to just let advocacy know that this is something that obviously we've heavily discussed, and this is probably something that they want to be looking into this year.
All right, go ahead.
Two things. First of which, again, I would discourage tasking a coordinator with something from the USC level, from council floor. If you would like our coordinators to do something, task it to the executive, and we will then go on to make sure that the next person gets it done. It's just like a chain of command type of thing, and it just, yeah, specifically talking about the EnviroWestern part, I would just like heavily discourage tasking EnviroWestern. Instead, if you would really like this to be done, task us to do it, and we shall pass that on. Furthermore, I don't see this as a very strong advocacy point, as well as I definitely don't see it becoming an advocacy priority. So I would heavily also discourage giving this to advocacy standing committee, maybe the student experience standing committee, where we can actually find out whether this is something that students would like to do. I'd say if there's a committee to refer it to, that would probably be the best one at this point in time.
Andrew, Chair of the Board of the USC. I would just like to add an addendum to my seemingly harsh commentary. I really like to commend Councillor Kimji on his efforts through motions 2 to 6, compiling all this information and presenting it to council. Also, I would like to remind everybody, the USC Board of Directors is a very critical body. And if I ever say anything on council floor that seems harsh and critical, just understand that it's not personal in any way, shape, or form. I'm merely discussing the merits of each motion as it is, and I just don't want to leave any bad blood on council floor with what I think, yeah, it was a harsh commentary, what I presented. Just be cognizant of that I don't mean any personal disrespect to any of your sentiments. So thank you.
Councillor Yee.
I don't remember raising my placard, but I have nothing to say.
Okay.
Suzanta King's counselor. Just like to reiterate, I'm new to the role of chair of the advocacy committee, but in my basic understanding, we would be dealing with more issues, kind of focusing on the advocacy papers that may be written this year, more about kind of more controversial topics on campus, things like that. So this seems to be maybe more, again, maybe student experience, but then again, that's also my kind of me in my new role, kind of seeing how I'm going to navigate that.
Okay. Yes.
Sorry, I guess I was a little bit confusing before, so I apologize. Just to clarify, I guess what I was trying to say is that I think we could just as easily send a Facebook message to EnviroWestern and say, hey, do you think this might be cool? Like, this seems like a cool idea. If this is something you'd like to explore, go for it, yay. But I didn't think that it was I didn't think that it was something necessarily for USC to be tasked with. And as such, just for like the sake of kind of moving forward, I think everyone's pretty much got a good idea of how everyone feels. So I would like to call a question.
Okay, to be clear, we are still discussing the motion to refer, but move, do I have a seconder for calling the question on the motion to refer? Councilor Yee, that is you, yes? All right, all those in favor of calling the question on the motion to refer? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? All right, question is called on the motion to refer. All those in favor of referring to advocacy? Opposed? And in consultation with student experience, yes. So in favor of referring to advocacy in consultation with student experience? Opposed? Noted abstentions? All right, referral fails. That takes us back to discussion of the main motion. Next up, I have
Okay, so yeah, Eric Ugas, nursing counselor. Just a couple small things to put into perspective. Like, I've noticed the discussion has really, really shifted for the past, I don't even know how long we've been talking about houseplants, but we have to kind of consider at this point, since we kind of crossed out that one part of the motion as not really being the most, I guess, accurate would be the word. Why do we want houseplants if we want house plants, or if we don't want them, why? So with that in mind, can we call the question?
Okay, so motion to call the question. Do I have a seconder to call the question? Yep. All those in favor? To call the question, yes. Opposed? Any noted abstentions? All right, question is called on motion 6, so we will move to voting. Polling is open. Okay, it looks like I have everyone. I'm not seeing anything else come in. 3, 2, 1. Last chance. All right, polling is closed. Motion fails. Okay. All right, so moving on. Next we have for discussion. Items for discussion. Seeing none. Last call. Oh. Yep.
Wait, do we have a new business section?
That's next.
Okay, then I'll just say Peter Fragaskatos gave me his business cards to give to everyone. If you'd like one after, please let me know. Thank you.
And, yeah.
This will be really quick, and I know we've said thank you a few times, but I really do want to thank Adam for bringing all these motions forward, because this is the job of this body, to bring forward things that maybe not be the best research, maybe not have been ready for the floor, but to just like speak on behalf of what you think students want and speak on behalf of what people have told you is literally what your job is. Come and talk to us next time, and we can kind of help you through a few of these things, and we can make sure that these motions are more ready before they come to council floor. I don't think we're here to be adversaries. We're here to work together to find the best answer. But I really do want to thank you for bringing all these forward. And just because some failed, that doesn't mean that you should stop bringing them forward, because that is your job as a counselor, to bring forward what you think your constituents want. Thank you.
Any other items for discussion? Okay, I'm seeing none. That will take us to new business. Any items of new business?
Hello. Hi. I have a motion. It's not on here. Give me 20 seconds.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. So this was posted in our council group a little earlier. But I have a motion regarding an ad hoc governance committee terms of reference. Do I have to read this whole background? Okay, whereas the current governance structure of the USC is confusing for all stakeholders, whereas the July 2017 meeting of the board of directors tasked the USC president and COO to develop a plan to address this role confusion and relating documents, whereas efforts to fix this confusion can only be completed with buy-in from all members of the USC, whereas a proper solution to these governance issues can only be done through a holistic approach, be it resolved that council pass the ad hoc governance review committee terms of reference. And I'll let Aaron speak to it.
So hopefully you've all had the chance to peruse this document in the Facebook group. So I sort of included a little prelude in there as well. What's been done in the past is bylaws are sort of changed here and there, and so they tend to contradict each other. And so as well, approximately 4 years ago, the board of directors and the executive became two separate bodies. So now we have three large bodies that govern the USC. And so both of those states have left us with a bit of a mess in terms of our governance structure. And so we've decided that a way to approach this is to create this committee and then look into potentially hiring an external consultant to come in and write our bylaws, as well as create a report that helps us define all of the roles and responsibilities and sort of sets a plan for how we can write all of our policies and procedures to align with those bylaws and role definitions. So yeah, does anyone have any questions? Does everyone know what I'm talking about in terms of my post in the Facebook group, and you've had a chance to read it?
Is anyone absolutely baffled as to what is currently happening? Yeah, this is a very good time. If you have no idea at all what's going on, this is the ideal time to bring that up.
We're both proxies, so we have no idea what's going on.
Oh,
okay.
cool.
Aaron.
Um,
Probably. You have my email, right? Yes, if you can send that to me, if you wanted to speak to it in the meantime, but I will pull it up.
Yeah, so at the BOCO retreat, which was our board of directors retreat, there was a lot of discussion around some of the collisions that the bodies in our organization face. So staff not knowing what exec are supposed to do, exec not knowing what council is supposed to do, council not knowing what board is supposed to do, and vice versa. And then when there's areas of overlap, that's I think where our biggest confusion and biggest points of contention come from, when someone has to go, you can't do that because it's not in your purview, but that isn't specifically written out anywhere. And so the original intent from the board of directors was that, okay, let's try and create a document that has all of this in one place so that people can better understand this, not just for us, but also for students and anyone that's looking into the USC. And then from that, what we realized is that if we really want to get this done, we can't just keep on doing this thing that the USC does constantly, where we look at one thing and don't look at everything else that surrounds it and how it changes all the surrounding documents. So what we've decided to do is do an entire governance review, which may include an external governance review, bringing in people to help us do this. And what this motion right now is striking an ad hoc committee that will be made up of members of council, staff, executive, and board to ensure that all bodies are representative. Staff as a resource member, not as a voting member, but just to make sure that all bodies of the organization are at the table and can have a holistic discussion about our entire governance, and trying to do it with a holistic approach. Yeah?
Were there other, sorry, is that a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Angaretti, science counselor. So would this review also involve bylaw 2 and how the elections are run, or would it just be the terms for the job positions and descriptions?
So it will include all of our corporate bylaws. So bylaw 2 with elections. And then it also will, the report, our plan for that is to have some sort of like forward-looking on the trickle-down policies, and so that would address any other issues with elections.
Any other questions while I pull up the terms of reference? All right. There are the terms of reference on the screen. A moment while I zoom on those a bit. About as big as I can get it without it going off the screen. You can scroll down. Yeah. Oh, I just meant for, yeah. What do I get? There we go. All right, there it is. And, sorry, do I have questions at the back of the room? Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Point of information, who did we have in mind for this external consultant?
That has not yet been decided.
But like in general, like what kind of consultant were you looking to get? Like would it be our legal consult kind of thing, or?
Yeah, an idea that we've sort of thrown around is reaching out to our alumni network, and so looking at someone who has an understanding of the organization and now has a role in like corporate governance.
Could I ask a second question?
Yeah, sure.
To whom would this committee report? Would it be to council, to the governance committee, to the board?
They would each report back, like the representatives would sort of, so that it will include the chair of the board of directors, so then he will report back to the board, and then the chair of the governance committee of council will then report back to council.
So the purview that the USC has over this committee is kind of shared across all three bodies?
Yes.
Councillor Foreman, did I see a question from you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Jared Foreman, social science counselor. Just a quick point of information. How long do you envision this council or these ad hoc committee to operate? Is this like just a one-year thing and to be reported back to each constituent body? Like, what's the sort of the time frame that you're envisioning?
We are hoping that we can report back by November, because we would like to get this in before the elections timeline, so that we ensure that to have the rules for elections, but additionally to have roles and responsibilities laid out so that when people are applying for these positions and running, they understand the roles that they're applying to.
All right, and, oh, sorry. Yeah, if you want to add to that, go ahead.
Just adding a comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
In addition to that, when the board of directors first discussed this kind of idea of this committee being built, it was on the premise that, like President Saliba was talking about, that both council and the board and staff and the executive kind of have overlapping functions, and it's sometimes very hard to delineate what our specific roles are in each governing body. So that part of the job will be kind of sitting down, and we had a very effective exercise at the board development retreat, sitting down and just mapping out what is under the purview of each governing body. And I think that that portion should definitely will be done by that timeline that Aaron had described to you. In addition to that, I believe personally that the bylaw amendments, we're going to try our best as a committee to kind of get those done right before for the elections to happen. But I'm under the impression, to be frank, that it might take a little bit longer on those things. But that's just my personal commentary.
Okay. And head you next.
Withdrawn.
Okay, and yeah, go ahead.
Rakshit Gangreddy, Science Counselor. Just a point of information question. Are there any costs associated with this? And if there are, how does that fit into our overall budget? And would council be made aware of these costs?
So at this point of time, you wouldn't be approving costs because we're just creating the committee who is then going to look into the potential to incur costs if we do hire someone. So I will report back when that becomes relevant, but at this point in time, we wouldn't know like where that money would come from or how much that may be.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, given that, we will move into discussion of the motion. Is this moved by you on behalf of the executive? Okay, this is moved on behalf of the executive. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Let's say, yeah. Do you want to motivate any further on behalf of the executive? All right, so as seconder?
Which one?
You. Yep.
Proxy for Kate?
Yep.
Oh, I have nothing to say.
Okay. Do I have any other speakers to this motion? Okay, seeing none, we will move to a vote. So all in favor of this motion? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? Okay, that motion passes. I should pull this back up. There it is. One moment. Any other new business? Yep.
So, since we just passed that motion, it relays a new business, which is now, by virtue of the terms of reference, Keaton will sit on the committee as chair of the governance standing committee, but there will also be one member of council that will also sit on this governance committee, and that will be elected by council, and we would like to do that today. So I would like to motion to have this election now.
Okay, do I have a seconder to have the election now? Councilor Foreman, I got to you first. Do you want to motivate that any further?
No, I think it makes sense.
Councilor Foreman, a seconder. All right, any speakers to having an election for that now? Okay, all those in favor of having said election now? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? Okay, we'll be having an election for that now. I assume you have things to say.
So I think the best way to do this is to allow for nominations on the floor, whether self-nominations or nominations of another councillor. And then furthermore, do we have an elections procedure for this? We do, don't we, if we elect? I think it's similar to how we did our chair elections in a way. So we can go into we'll figure that out after we do nominations. We'll do nominations for now, and then we'll figure out the process.
Happy to advise if needed. Yeah. Okay, so first, sorry, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Yee. You can feel free to accept or decline my nomination.
Okay, Councilor Yee accepts. Yes. I'm just going to rotate down.
Hello? Yeah, I'd like to nominate King's Councillor Mo Said.
Do you accept? All right, that's also accepted. I had someone. Yes.
I'd like to nominate President Tang. I know he's not here, but we're in communication.
Okay, he has said he is fine with being not. All right, I'll take your word for that. I promise. Okay. Yep. Next.
I'd like to nominate Arts President Massimo Perza.
And you accept? Okay. Yes.
Sorry. I would like to nominate Science Counselor Yee.
Already nominated.
Oh, you can't.
Councilor Yee.
Let's make this fun. I'd like to nominate Councillor Foreman.
Okay. And you accept? Yeah. Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, we have our nominations. Let's talk procedure.
I would like to motion for a 5-minute recess so we can figure this out.
Again, I'll go by unanimous consent. Are there any objections to a 5-minute recess? Okay, we'll be back in 5. I can tell you what I typically do, but if you've got something, good to hear. Okay, so typically what I would do for something like this, we have a bit of difficulty. We have someone nominated in absentia, but if someone's in communication with them, they can take on the role. I would typically have someone basically bring the candidates to the front of the room, give them some period of time. I'd say 3 to 5 minutes. I'd go with 3 given numbers to present their case. I would take typically 3 questions from the room with the stipulation they must be directed to all candidates. Candidates would have a minute each to respond. After that, I would remove them from the room. The assumption is they vote for themselves.
2-minute opening.
Yep, that's fine. That's fine by me. And again, I give a minute to respond. If the room wants to force me to extend that number of questions, they can, but I suspect they won't. Remove them. We're not going to be able to ballot this for a number of reasons, but then just show of hands for each one, and I'll track. It's tricky. We need a better one. Can we ballot? Is there a reason why we can ballot it? It's hard because we don't have anything that's immediately recognizable. Yeah, that's why it's difficult to.
Oh, it is?
Okay.
On the clicker?
Perfect. All right. Yeah, so that'll be the easiest way. We'll just give that a minute to get set up. Cool. Perfect. Yeah, so that'll be the easiest way. What else? I'll announce the procedure of it. I'll announce how we're going to go through it. Typically, remove them from the room. Typically, I would allow them each to appoint a scrutineer. So if they want to have someone watch the counting of the ballots on their behalf. It's not necessary though. Yeah, it's not necessary. It's a SOGS procedure. You guys don't need it. And there's kind of no reasonable understanding by which I'm not impartial anyway, so I don't think we need it. So I think that's good to go. I'm just gonna run the washroom and then. I assume one of the people. I'm just gonna run the washroom and go back and fire it up.
Although I'm pretty sure that's what. Yo, what if he
I'll figure this out eventually.
Huh? We've spoken before through AIR, through Association of Organizations. Yeah. So it was a smaller fine. Sure. Because I mean, see his experience. Well, I mean, specifically. I can so I mean, I was shouting about water. Yeah. He actually gets to. Yeah. It's straight to it. It's very. I just have to tailor my message. That's what I went to him and went to the other one. Just leave it there. But I mean, he's a no bad blood there. No. No, I thought it was going to be weird at first, but he never said. Yeah. The key with political view, if anything, it's a good one. Because I've done percent. Yeah. Which he kind of acknowledged. He said, like, I'm a police officer. I believe to see that students take involved in their community. It's like, this is not something you need to ever think about. It should kind of happen.
I'm telling him that those are two questions. He'll type
Try not to annoy him.
I usually just poke around and ask him, sure. Why do we do this? Yeah, I do want to ask him, like, I remember.
He loves the shit. He's like, I was like,
A lot of students that are just graduating, getting into salaries that aren't up to It is. Oh my God! Like, thought maybe they'd be a little too busy. No, man. They are. Well, I think it's students are the next thing. That's what I put up to Adam. So like, what is it? Yeah. It's gonna be good for the hunters. Yeah. That's why the strategy is like you're working all three parties. To make sure that whatever we want to do, every month, so that going to get right. It's really so exciting.
Waiting for ballots to arrive.
And then the other 9 are elected, but how great would that be? Just play it across. And then I get to an SGA, and I think actually this is very different perspective.
Right.
Option is like cap one number of people. Well, nothing but cap, but I just want to make sure that so for example, students are really excited. They don't want to get elected to a delegate. They go for interview application process. Something like that. I just want to fall. The SGA is at the end of October. You're in this try to come to this
Oh, you just
I have.
Okay, let's get back to it.
Can everyone?
So before I explain procedure, I believe we have, Councilor Sayed, you had something you wanted to say? Yes. Okay, so Councilor Sayed has withdrawn his name. So here's how this is going to go in consultation with the executive. I'm going to call I'm going to give the candidates each 2 minutes to give their spiel, to give their presentation. After that, we'll take 2 questions from the room. Candidates will have 1 minute each to respond to those questions, after which the candidates will be booted out of the room while everyone else votes. Does anyone have any questions before we get to that? Yes.
How is the voting done? Is it by preferential ballot?
Yes, it is.
So do the candidates not get a vote then if they're on the
We will have the candidates vote before they leave, let's say. Basically, same reason that the profs kicked out of the room for course evaluations. But yes, you guys can vote before you leave. Everyone else will vote once you leave. Are there any other questions about procedure here? Seeing none, let's move to it. So we'll start with Councilor Yee. Go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
do it here or get up and like?
That's up to you.
I'll just stay here. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Frank Yee, science counselor. So I think that I would really like to be a part of this ad hoc committee, because part of like the main reason why I wanted to run for the USC this year was because I felt that in my first year I did not know who my science counselors were, and I didn't even know that they existed for the most part. And I feel that one of the biggest goals, or I guess priorities of mine for this year, is to really bring the USC back to a place where we can connect to the students again, where we can actually be generally more available to them so that they see us as their voice and advocating on their behalf, right? We see that, I mentioned this in my speeches before, but our voting turnout is abysmal compared to every other university in Ontario, right? And like McMaster, 48%, and we're barely breaking 20%. And I think that part of that is because of the clarity, is because like they see the USC is so bureaucratic, so like unattainable, like so hard to understand, right? And so something like this committee, I feel, will be a huge step forward to letting the students better understand the USC, right? With clarity does come better understanding. And so I feel like my voice and the passion I have would be a benefit to this committee and would be able to, really bring that forward. So that's why I really feel like I'd be good for this.
All right, thank you. Councilor Peruzza, you're next.
Hello. I want to run for this position because I really like governance. I like on the AHSC, Arts and Humanities Students Council, as VP Finance, and even in my first year, I focused heavily on doing constitution reform, and like I pretty much helped alongside the president and the VP Finance for my first year, kind of rewrite the Constitution and make it actually make sense, which I guess is along the lines of what we're trying to do with this committee. I think it's important that all of these bodies actually are able to clarify what they're doing and how they interact with each other. And I think that because I'm also going to be on the Governance and Finance Committee, I'll be able to work with Keaton, because we would both be on the committee, to represent council well. And I'd like that the experience from the Governance and Finance Committee would also help on the ad hoc committee. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Next I have Councilor Foreman.
Hello, I'm Jared Foreman, social science counselor. And the reason why I want to run to represent council on this ad hoc committee is, well, basically the reason why I ran to be a USC counselor in the first place. I ran because I felt that the USC in general is not the transparent representative body that it really could be, and that we can do a lot better in terms of representing the student body as a whole. I mean, Frank mentioned a lot of these points, saying how our turnout is barely cracking 20%, and most people simply don't know how this organization functions. I'll be frank with you, when I first when I first considered running for a position in the USC, I found it incredibly difficult to find information, find out exactly what my role entailed, differentiating between what a senator does, what the Board of Governors do, what council does, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of bureaucracy involved, and it's tough to, navigate the minutia of the USC, considering it's such a complex organization. So I think just based on my main reason of becoming a USC counselor, I think I would be a good representative for the council on this ad hoc committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, representative of Kyle Tang.
Hi, everyone. So Kyle is actually watching the stream. If you'd like to wave and say hi, he's in that camera right there. So I'm going to be speaking on behalf of Kyle Tang, music president. So last year, I had the privileged opportunity to lead an extensive and comprehensive reform within the Music Student Council, where I led a team looking into the various roles and bodies that exist within the Music Student Council and looking for redundancies in the roles and making sure that they all function in the most effective and efficient way possible. And I find that that's very similar to the mandate here with this ad hoc committee. And last year, actually, I proxied several times on council, and one of the things that I found really confusing and challenging to wrap my head around is the conflicting or sometimes conflicting purviews between the board, the executive, and council, and the challenges that come with that. And so with the experience that I have in handling this sort of extensive review and the consultations that I got to participate in with that, which culminated actually in rewriting the music constitution, I really believe that this gives me the skill set that I would need for this committee. And I'd also like to add that being somebody who sits on the advocacy standing committee as opposed to GNF, it adds a second, I guess, degree of representation to that committee, as the committee is already represented by Keaton. And so, yeah, so I really believe that I'd be able to really fulfill the role present in this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move to questions. Again, as a reminder, any questions must be directed to all candidates. Do I have a first questioner? Oh, yes.
What is one experience you've had that you believe you will encounter in this in like being on this committee, and how did you handle it? / if possible, if you failed, how did you handle that?
All right, I'm going to ask Councillor Foreman to respond first.
Sorry, could you just clarify that question?
Sorry, yeah, as I was saying it, it was like, okay. So, what is one experience you've had that, so in terms of constitutional reform or writing advocacy, similar things that we're doing now, what was one experience you've had with that, and how did you go about it? / if possible, if you failed, can you elaborate on that? Because I think that's more important to know how you would pick yourself back up.
Right, so you have 1 minute.
Okay. I guess just thinking back to, I guess, my past experiences in student organizations, if we're looking back to high school, where I'd spent time with many different clubs, just looking to reform. I'm sure many of you are aware of DECA, the sort of business organization. So served as president of that in high school, just completely revamping the way that it was structured in terms of trying to promote the club, in terms of organizing trips to different competitions. Of course, it's quite a challenge, completely revamping it. But I think working with other people, especially someone like Keaton, who seems to be quite experienced in terms of governance, and sort of having that support and just working together collaboratively you'd be able to mitigate any sort of issues and prevent failure.
Thank you. Next up, I'll turn it to Councillor Perruzza. Again, 1 minute.
Yeah, so when it comes to constitutional reform, there's always going to be a multitude of different people trying to get different things out of it. And so when I was trying to fix up the Constitution, there was a lot of back and forth in our Constitution review meetings basically, you just have to be good at conflict resolution. If you're having an argument with someone, realize that there are always good points on both sides, but someone has to win, and if you do lose, you take it well, but I don't know,
Right.
stuff.
Thank you. Do we have a response from Councillor Tang? Go ahead.
Okay, so I sent him he heard the question, he sent me his response. So again, so the role that he served last year, leading the review or the governance overhaul in Music Student Council, was very similar to this. And the role that he would be serving on this ad hoc committee as a sort of liaison between council and the ad hoc committee is also something that he did extensively as the chair of that governance overhaul committee, because he was constantly consulting with constituents, with elected members, past members of Music Student Council. And so that dialogue, that discourse that brings back results to the ad hoc committee is something that Kyle has experienced with heavily.
And Councillor Yee.
So I have the biggest experience that I have that's really similar to this was back in high school. I was the student council president, as well as the year before that I was the executive that was responsible for kind of managing all the different clubs we had. And so between those 2 years, one of the biggest initiatives that I did was that of the 50, 60 clubs that we had at our school, I was the one who kind of moved forward to try to unify them in a way that would allow them to kind of work together as an umbrella organization. And with that, obviously, 50 different clubs, some of them with multiple executives, there were multiple voices, multiple different views of how the school should move forward and how the student council should be able to work with the clubs. And from that experience, right, like being kind of the leader of it as the president, I realized that you may have an opinion sometimes, and it may not necessarily be wrong, or it may not necessarily be just better or worse than other people's. Is that sometimes you got to take a step back and kind of look at why does this person want this? Why does this person want it this way, right? Because you're not going to get anyone to agree with you if they don't see a benefit to what you're doing. And so sometimes kind of conceding on a point or kind of taking a step back and kind of looking at their perspective shouldn't be necessarily seen as you're giving up on your beliefs, but more so that you're kind of working together to make a compromise or make a plan that's the best for everyone. I feel like that kind of experience that I have is really the best for this ad hoc committee.
Thank you. Do we have a final question for the candidates? Okay, I'll ask the 4 candidates to come up here to cast their ballots for throwing you guys out, and then give the rest of you your ballots. Thank you. Yep. All right, and once you're done with your ballot, bring it up here, put it in the box. You're getting in trouble for this. Exactly. We'll toss it out, eh? All right, is there anyone who A, has a ballot, B, has not voted, and C, wishes to vote? Last chance. Everyone who wants to vote and is allowed to vote has voted? Okay, with that, would someone mind fetching our candidates? Oh, good, they heard me. All right. So, ballots are in. Counting will be handled not right now. Any other new business? Yes.
Keaton Olson, social science counselor. I'd like to move motion 002, USC recognition of the original homecoming date. I think I sent it to you.
Okay, can you read it out?
Yeah. So, whereas the date change to Western homecoming came after one of the safest homecomings on record, with the least ticketed offenses occurring at off-campus student festivities, whereas the date change has led students to celebrate homecoming on both the original September 30th date and the October 25th date set by the Western Executive, leading to a rift and confusion for both university services, Western alumni, and most importantly with London municipal and police services. Whereas the new homecoming date is situated in the height of midterm season, placing undue stress if students want to take part in homecoming events and festivities, and putting further a burden on students' mental health and wellness. Let it be resolved that the 2017-2018 USC executive, and if necessary, future executives, work with the Western Executive to restore the original date of the homecoming holiday.
All right. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
There already is.
Oh, perfect. Who's seconder? Okay. So as seconder, go ahead. Oh, wait, sorry. Do you want to motivate? That's how things work. Do you want to motivate any further as mover?
What's that?
Do you want to give any further motivation for the motion as the mover of the motion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So this motion was created by Mitchell Pratt, hence the spelling mistakes. I don't make mistakes, guys. But yeah, this is pretty much just a motion that will empower the executive, so Toby and Landon, to go to the university and tell them that we have the support of the entire USC, asking you to stop playing with the date of homecoming and bring it back to its original date. So I think that this would be a powerful tool if we want to lobby for that to happen, and I'd like to see it passed.
Okay, and seconder?
I believe it's already seconded by.
No, as in, does the seconder want to motivate? You want to speak to it? No? Okay. Do I have any other speakers to this motion? Yeah, go ahead. And then.
So, okay, so a proxy for Kate Moran. So if you guys weren't aware, this was something that we passed last year as well at this time. So this is something I'm personally familiar with, as I had sat in this discussion last year. And I just want to, I am speaking in favor of this motion, but I just also want to remind you that in the end, it's not really within USC's jurisdiction, as much as we can say we want to task the executive to support and say this is what we want to do as a council. I just want to make sure that we are aware that this is a fraction of the ultimate input. So it's important that we show solidarity representing the students about how students feel, but just remember that at the end, and this was something that we were told over and over again, that it matters that we show that we're together on this, but at the same time, at the end, it's admin who chooses. So yeah, I just want to caution and remind you that this is what the ultimate outcome would look like.
All right, Councilor Yee.
So speaking further on that point, then if I support the spirit of the motion and the motion itself, it's just my worry is what the further be result at when it says further executives work with the Western Executive to restore the original date. Since the USC really has no say in that matter, would it make more sense to instead say future executives will advocate to the Western Executive to restore the original date?
That's a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I'm going to seek unanimous consent. Does anyone object to making that, to just taking that amendment on? Okay, motion is so amended. Go ahead.
Just more point of information. I just want to clarify, was Councillor Olson pushing for this motion to be tabled until September, or was he pushing for this to be actually like ran through like right here, right now? Because I thought I heard the word table. So like.
Like right now.
Okay, yeah.
I guess. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I guess like a sort of point of information would just be for, I guess, if anyone is familiar, is there anything else that we could potentially say or do that would potentially like do something different from last year to maybe convince admin otherwise? Like, I don't know if there was, I know there was some sort of petition last year, but more of a formalized petition or something more expressive or meaningful that might give us more leverage in that debate or conversation?
I'll turn that question over to the executive.
So this is exactly what I was going to say before, so you can take me off the speakers list.
All
but
right.
So with this decision, as Jacqueline said, largely it is out of our hands, and therefore dictating how we advocate for this completely ties our hands to do what's appropriate to try and get it done. And I know making a statement in the Gazette or doing something along those lines seems like it would be something that's like a strong statement, but to Western administration, it really wouldn't change anything. So I think keeping this at a high level, and this gives us a clear mandate. It gives us a clear mandate to go ahead and say, this is what students want. But I think keeping it at that level would be the best way to go about this, and also further understanding that, like Jacqueline said, at the end of the day, it really isn't our decision, but we can have we have a stance on it, and this gives us a mandate for it.
Thank you.
I wanted to say almost like contradictory. I think that as it's an advocacy like point, like we don't actually have any standing, but we are the representatives of the student body. I strongly encourage everyone to go for this, because in my experience talking to friends, everything like that, it's pretty much unanimous. Everyone prefers the September date, and having a unanimous stance from this council as an advocacy point basically is saying that the Western admin isn't really taking the students' consideration, which at that point, that's the strongest thing that we can do.
Proxy for Tang.
So I'd like to first ask a question to the executive. What current programming, is, if any, is being planned for homecoming? Is it being planned for what would be the original date or for a later midterm season date?
So at the moment, there's still a lot of conversations around what is being planned. They're definitely planning for the October 21st date, which Western has recognized as homecoming, and they're saying we're not recognizing September 30th as anything more than a street party that may happen, except they also understand that they can't just go, it's no longer homecoming, we don't have to do anything for it, because really Western doesn't have that negligence. Like, they can't just say it's not ours, we didn't know it was going to happen. So there's still a lot of conversations with London Police, Campus Police, Western Communications, and everyone there trying to figure out what we're doing for this first date. I had a meeting with Western Housing, Western Administration, Campus Police, Housing Mediation. I'm having a meeting with London Campus Police coming up in the next month to see what exactly their plans are. They're not happy that something will be happening on September 30th, I'm sure, as we all know, but they realize that it's the reality of it. And something that I have stressed to them is the fact that students aren't happy, and that's why they're going to continue to do this, because they think that September 30th is the day that we want, and just moving it to the middle of exams isn't good enough, and the messaging around it could have been better or whatever, but at the end of the day, students aren't happy. So that's a problem that they really need to focus on, not just the fact that a street party is happening. They need to focus on why it's happening. So those are conversations that have already been had, but nothing concrete has been planned for that date yet.
Okay, just to clarify, on like as far as the USC is concerned, like a Hoko on the Hill kind of programming or anything in general, is there anything being planned right now? Currently?
On which date are you referring to?
Like, I want to know what's being planned.
Oh, okay, cool. So on the October 21st date, I think they're looking to do things around the football game, maybe a tailgate, maybe some kind of concert out there. It's going to try and be something that's angled towards alumni as well as students, trying to bring everyone into one space, because in their mind, that's what homecoming needs to be. It needs to be students and alumni in one space coexisting and being able to rally around something. So that's kind of their goal for the October 20th date. There will not be a HOCO on the Hill or anything of that sort. Western's been pretty adamant about that.
Okay, can I make an amendment on what was just said?
Sure.
Okay, so this was, so as Jacqueline mentioned, we had a similar motion last summer, which kind of had several parts to it. One of the parts was the USC acknowledging that the student body was not happy with the change of date, and that as far as the student body was concerned, HOCO is still in September. But the second part of the motion was that the USC would provide alternative programming on the original homecoming date. And so I'd like to motion to amend, be it further resolved that the USC work to provide alternative programming on the September 30th date.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Yes. Do you want to motivate the amendment any further?
Yeah, so I think part of the idea here is that we recognize that students are going to party on that date regardless, and part of the reasoning behind the USC taking part in creating HOCO planning was to prevent unsafe celebration or celebration that, or at least to provide a safe alternative for students who want to celebrate on the original date.
And a seconder.
Yeah, so just adding to that, what the main conversation ended up becoming is how we're going to devote our resources and allocated budget, and how we're going to split them between the two events, like what's the ratio, what are we looking at, kind of a thing. So I really encourage that we have this discussion and try to figure out how we're going to be devoting our resources, what it will look like. And also in addition, remembering that especially for affiliates, that we don't want to kind of butt your heads in terms of what programming you guys may have, because last year the homecoming for you guys was different from Western at large. So it's really important that, for example, if we were to do a fall fest again, that it doesn't interfere with the HBK festival, because that was a huge point of contention as well.
Go ahead.
I have a point of information. Last year, wasn't the alternative programming a huge misfire? Like, could any of the executives speak to the attendance at there?
Yeah, so I volunteered at the Fall Festival last year, so I think I can probably speak best to it. It was better attended than was reported on to the outside world. Like it wasn't great, but it did well, and we were happy with the attendance and how many free things got handed out and how many people came through the building. I don't know how specific numbers, but it was a good event.
Lucy Watson, Health Sci Counselor. Sorry, just a further sort of another question directed toward the execs as well, was two-part. First of all, did you guys have anything planned for the September 30th date? Any activities? And I guess my second point would be then, would you guys be, should this amendment go through, willing to discuss other maybe events that might be more attractive towards students, and maybe garner some more attraction and get more people to come in?
So looking at the September 30th date, that meeting that I had with all the people from around Western, what's funny is the discussion around September 30th ended up coming to exactly what the other HOCO motion is. And the intent behind that being that if it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, then it's probably a duck kind of thing. And Western doesn't want to say, okay, we're going to throw Fall Festival on the September 30th day, but it's not homecoming, but everyone kind of knows it's homecoming. So I think at this year, talking with them, they didn't seem like, I think they would be interested if that's the decision that we decided to make with it, but I think the general consensus at the moment is pushing towards what actually the other motion on the table is at the moment. For that September 30th date. If you think that another form of programming is better, we'd love to hear ideas. I wouldn't want to have that conversation right now. I think if we can come up with something high level at this point, and then if you have ideas, you can feel free to reach out to me, you can reach out to Mac, and we can discuss them and see what we could come up with. And sorry, what was your second question?
Sorry, my second question was, it was
if there's something more attractive to students.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a conversation that we're definitely open to. If there's something, if you have ideas, we can talk about it and see what we can make happen.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind there's a budget that we must stay within.
Sorry, can I also just quickly add on to that question? Okay. And then also, I guess if we weren't to go with the 30th date, would you guys be planning stuff on the October 21st as well? Or is it like a firm stance that we're not supporting that because students aren't accepting that as their homecoming?
So at the moment, we are looking at both dates and seeing how we can make it best possible for students on both dates. But that's a decision for you guys to make here now. Is it that you want to say only September 30th, no October 21st, or if you want to say both, or if you want to say just October 21st? But that being said, I would also like to say that it kind of falls in the hands of the advocacy initiatives that we're trying to do around this. So if we say just September 30th, that is our advocacy tactic, and that's how we've decided to work with the university, and that means that that October 21st date will now have no student-facing pieces because I am not allowed to go out and program for that day because I've been mandated just to recognize September 30th. So just recognizing that that's part of it as well.
Okay. Any other speakers to the amendment? Yes.
I just want to remind everyone as well that, sorry to keep bringing up the past, but I think it's important. But another thing that was brought up last year extensively and was really reinforced was the idea of safety and just knowing again that we can't ignore either date, and so making sure that we are there. And I think another thing that's really important is, again, as a council, I think we have to really stand up for what we decide today as one unit. And I think for me, it's important to remember how we're feeling right now about this issue in 2 or 3 months after we've been exposed to our friends kind of being like, oh, we're going to go party on the 30th. Remember that this is a conversation we've had because it's so important that regardless of what decision we make, if we have a fall fest, if we have other programming, whatever, that all of us are supporting both equally and not kind of being like, oh, but homecoming's actually on the 30th, don't go to the 21st. It's really important that we remember how this feels and how we've discussed this, because I feel as if from in 2 months, 3 months from now, this feeling might change. So just remember that this is a conversation and it is important.
Wait. Any other speakers to the amendment? Yep.
So looking at alternative programming, something that we need to recognize is that there's a budgetary constraint around it as well. Looking at something like Fall Festival last year, that's something that was a joint effort by Western Administration, Housing, and everyone pitched some money into it. So how you would like us to spend that money, how you would like us to, what does programming look like is another question that we also need to answer. So I'm saying this in partnership with the other, in my mind, I think that this question is something that might go a little bit better with the next homecoming motion, because that's talking specifically about what kind of programming we are doing on that date. This motion is more talking about our advocacy initiatives towards that date, and I'm trying to look at both and have a conversation about both while only staying on this one, but it's kind of impossible. So I think that I would speak against this motion, and if we would like to bring this up in the next motion, because that's more specific to how we're going to be programming on that day, if that makes sense. I'm getting nods. Good.
Any other speakers to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? All right. So that amendment fails. That takes us back to discussion of the main motion. Are there any other speakers to the main motion? Yes.
Test. Adam Kimji. I'm just wondering about if the executive can respond to this. I don't know about the stance of last year. Do you know if the USC was officially for the, with support with Western, or were they against Western's move to change it? Does that make sense?
Did the USC have
the official stance by USC?
I don't think it was an official this is the date we are going for. If someone remembers the letter that Eddie wrote, they may be able to speak a little better to this, but I don't think it was an official September 29th is the date, but I think it was a more students aren't happy with the fact that there wasn't enough consultation and there wasn't enough of a discussion about it, but I think Jacqueline can speak better to it.
Yeah, is this in response to the question? Go ahead.
So last year's was a bit more contentious in that the way that I understood it was that the execs weren't previously actually allowed into the conversation, or assumptions were made so that there wasn't really input from USC, and it was kind of like, well, you're gonna be roped along with it. I mean, this is my word, so just take that as my word. I don't exactly want to speak for Eddie, but the way the letter read was more that this is the stance we're taking. We weren't necessarily consulted as fully as we would have liked, and this is the stance we're going to be taking. I don't want to speak for the current exec and how those relationships have hopefully developed and have gotten better, but to my understanding, last year's was more contentious in that we were under the assumption we weren't consulted at all.
Right. Okay. So in terms of that, then motion to like after. So like it's this motion says like work with the Western Executive to restore the original date. Would it be better to just maybe like do a casual statement by the USC, like an official stance that we don't support the new change date, and right instead of like, because right now it says restore the original date. I don't know, or am I reading the motion correct?
By passing this motion, it would become the position of this council that council as representatives of the USC want the date of homecoming to be September 30th. So it de facto is the formal position should this motion be adopted. I think would be the answer to that question.
Right. Okay. Can I do that, or is that some?
Again, the motion as it stands makes it the position of this council.
Oh, okay.
That
okay.
that
Then yeah. Sure. Good. I'm good.
Sorry. Alessia Zonta Kings, counselor. So I guess we can, from what I've been hearing, I just kind of want to summarize, just from my own personal knowledge as well. So we can all kind of agree, like, students are very upset about this. We all know this. And I just kind of want to, like, look at how the execs probably have to take this stance. It seems odd like, when you think about it, they have to advocate on behalf of students to party on a certain day, and that seems kind of, and you know, that's what it is, and it seems kind of inappropriate when you think about it that way. But so I think regardless, like, this institutional knowledge of our university, people will still continue to celebrate on that day for sure. So I just want a point of information from Toby, if possible. So we are keeping like this conversation at the forefront, and you have already been working on this, correct? Like, you have been just continually working with the administration on this issue, and now we are just going to be deciding if we want to do both or one.
Yeah, like every single time they go, hey Toby, what do you think? And I go, this is what students think, but they're upset about it. And they fully know we're upset about it, and that's just why I'm like, when writing a letter, what is the outcome that we're trying to achieve? Like, if that's the advocacy strategy you guys think is best, okay, but what is that trying to achieve, and is it achieving that is an important question to ask.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Test? Yeah. I think, as our very capable executives have told us, they are handling this, and I think they're advocating for what the students want and what we want. So I'm speaking against the motion. And, oh, someone else wants to speak. Okay.
Yeah. You can finish.
No, yeah, I was just going to, can I speak against it and call the question in the same?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Is that a
yes,
bad idea?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm calling this to question then.
Okay. So question's called. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
All in favor of calling the question? Opposed? All right, question is called. All those in favor of this motion? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? Councilor Kinji. Motion carries. Any other new business? Yep.
The motion I'd like to move is motion 001. 1 second. Homecoming USC tent and care packages. It reads, whereas it is the interest of the USC to impact and target the majority of the student body when pursuing events and initiatives, whereas Western Homecoming continues to be one of the largest celebrations of Western spirit and pride, whereas Homecoming has been criticized in the past for being unsafe and unsustainable due to student off-campus activities, be it resolved that campus task the 2017-18 USC executive with distributing food, water for students celebrating off-campus to ensure students are encouraged to hydrate and stay safe. Be it further resolved that the food water distribution will take place on the September 30th date when the majority of students celebrate homecoming to ensure maximum outreach for the initiative. Be it further resolved that the executive will consider the possibility of the creation of residence homecoming kits for first years whose contents may include Gatorade, pamphlets, packages from USC services, and in the interest of promoting a safer culture for students.
All right. And do you want to motivate?
Sure.
Go ahead then.
So this is another motion created by Mitchell Pratt, moving it on his behalf. And yeah, it's not very authoritative. This is just telling the executive to consider the possibility of creation, so it's not mandating it or anything, but this is sort of, if this is something that this council wants, then we can resolve that it be done.
All right, and seconder, anything to add? Do we have a seconder, actually? Sorry, I didn't know if there was one.
Yeah, we didn't get a seconder.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Yes, anything to add?
Alrighty, so this is kind of like right up my alley here. I do speak in support of this motion because, again, like repeating that this is just to consider the possibility of doing this. It's not like a yes, be all, end all that we are going to do this, but just some research that I did manage to kind of whip together as this was distributed. Just some stats. The age demographic at Western sits within the age demographic that the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada reported this past year, 2015-2016, in his report as being the age group most prevalent for binge drinking. And the side effect of binge drinking is alcohol being a diuretic can lead to dehydration, which could lead to other more dangerous health effects, in addition to alcohol toxicity and other things like that. So I feel that by distributing these kits, not only are we ensuring that the students are staying hydrated, because again, you cannot stop students from drinking. They will drink if they wish to drink and wish to party hard. But what we can do is use health promotion, disease injury prevention measures like this to kind of make the experience a little bit safer, because again, health promotion is not intended to be perfect, but it is intended to make some sort of a mark. And I do agree in this motion that we definitely look at targeting people in the first years and using maybe OC softs or even res softs to kind of distribute these kits, because again, they are part of our liability being, you know, residents of the Western campus. As far as the scope as of people who live off campus, maybe someone else could add in some thoughts on that.
All right, Councilor Kinji, I have you next.
Test. Adam Kimji, Social Science. I support the motion. Just a quick question though. I was wondering like where the actual stations would be set up. Like, is this, because it's off campus, right? So are the executives going through Brofdale throwing out water, or?
You want to respond? So yeah, I'll turn it over to Tony.
Check. Cool. So, like I said, this is actually something that's already been discussed with Western administration to do this. Ideas surrounding it is, yes, literally the executive walking around with coolers, handing out bottles of water, or where that food would be set up, whether off campus or on campus. All these are conversations that are being had. And to answer your question, there is no specific yet. It's still something that needs to be figured out, and we need to work with the City of London to say, okay, what are you going to allow us to do? especially since it's just off campus and that's not our jurisdiction. So, yeah.
I'd just like to clarify something I said before. Rereading it, only the third be it further resolved clause is non-authoritative. The other two say that you will distribute water, which could be amended. Actually, could we amend the first be it resolved clause to say council task the executive with the possibility of distributing water, and for the third or the second one as well, the same thing, but be resolved that the food water distribution will consider, or it doesn't really follow for that one, but yes, the first one.
Point of information?
Yeah.
Point of information?
Yes.
So if we were to limit tasking the executive to say that, only if it's possible, what would be justifiable grounds for it not being possible? Would it be like the city saying, no, we can't let you do this? Would that be the only acceptable?
So by wording of the motion, the answer would be to the judgment of the executive. If basically not feasible or possible based on feedback they've been given, they
Can I suggest then to Mr. Olson that we rather say, so long as the city allows, the executive do this?
Okay, so the proposed amendment is to change the first and second be it resolved and be it further resolved clauses to say to basically add if possible, if within what is permitted by the City of London. Does that sound right?
That follows, yeah.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Okay. Yep. Do you want to motivate any further as mover?
I do not.
A seconder? And then. Sure.
Lucy Watson, Health Sci Counselor. Sorry for speaking out without the mic. I was also thinking that maybe we should also add, perhaps instead of just distributing water and food for students, but just perhaps, if you want to specify that, that's cool, but also maybe adding like, I don't know, look into initiatives to help students as best they can. So awareness of like the legalities of, for example, like drinking on the street and maybe don't do that kind of thing. Maybe ways to deal with like being safe about drinking. So like, I don't know, doing some sort of like before HOCO around the September 30th time, putting out initiatives about, how to drink safely, make sure you eat carbs, maybe getting like saying food trucks, hey, come to this sort of area if you can, and try and like, offer them other alternatives for food as well that is accessible to students.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that is beyond the scope of the proposed amendment and will need to be dealt with as a separate amendment once this one is dispensed with. Yes.
So we're
discussing the amendment proposed. We'll get to that other. Yeah, we'll get to that other proposed amendment if it's moved after this. So this is on adding if possible slash as permitted by the City of London.
That's the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, I thought there was a. Okay, I'm gonna hold off for 2 seconds.
Okay. Yes.
I'd like to add on to the amendment, kind of more specifying it, because I don't see the City of London mandating it being the only reason. Like maybe if, like for example, like with the exception if the scope for some reason exceeds the USC's boundaries, like put it that way. I guess that would be more general terms. Or would that?
It's implied in any motion of a deliberative body that the motions extend only so far as the powers of that organization do, because anything beyond that is out of order. So I would suggest that's not necessary. Anything that they are not powerful enough to do, obviously they are not being tasked to do. So that would be taken as implied. But any other speakers to the amendment? Again, this is adding to the first and second resolution clauses, if possible, / as permitted by the City of London. Yep, yeah.
If I want to make a friendly amendment to the first amendment, should I wait or should I?
So there's technically no such thing as a friendly amendment.
Well, it's friendly.
If you want to propose some changing to that wording, go ahead. You are free to do that.
Okay. Just for this first be it resolved statement, I'd like to include that it says here that task the 2017-2018 USC executive with distributing. I'd also like to include just the words "and council." So it'll say task the 2017-2018 executive and council with distributing water and food on homecoming or on the September 30th date specified.
I'm going to seek unanimous consent for that one. Is there any objection to adding that to the amendment currently under
Speak against.
consideration? Does anyone want to object to that?
Can I speak?
To what?
If I object, can I answer a question? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, you can absolutely ask questions.
Like, when you say, like, we have test. Hey, Adam Kimji. When you say we, like, the council has to do it, right? What if we're sick or have some sort of circumstance that would prevent us from distributing water and water-related accessories?
Council is separate from the individual members of council.
Right. So when you say council, who are you talking about?
As a body, not necessarily as individuals.
Okay. So what if the majority of council is sick on that day? I'm serious. Like,
I'm serious too.
Drunk, sick, unoccupied, doing something else. I don't know. I think compelling entire council, that might be hard. I don't know.
This is a decision that is completely up to you guys. If you want to object, you can object to it, but
I withdraw my objection.
I think going through all the possible things that could happen could take days if we really wanted to.
Is this in objection to the amendment?
Not objection, just to add, kind of.
Okay.
Point of inquiry, I guess. Hussein Ali, President for Healthsci Student Council. I have a point of inquiry for execs, I guess. So, in case if someone can't make it on that day, what are the consequences?
I'm assuming that means none, or we're going to kill them. You might want to clarify which.
I think within reason. I think I said friendly amendment because this is a friendly. The spirit of this motion is that it's fun if the exec distribute this, but it's even more fun, and we're showing even more support for the student body if, say, a faculty president or counselors also wanted to join in this activity. That is good.
So again, I will ask. Oh, is that a question or? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Grace, science counselor. I had a question for Keaton Olson. In terms of when you say in there, be it resolved that the council tasks, like the thing that we're arguing about with distributing water, from what my understanding was, I just wanted to ask for clarification. From my understanding, I thought it meant like task you guys to find people to do it. For example, like for Fall Festival, it was like they had volunteers, like Mac volunteered, for example. That's what I thought. I wasn't sure. Like, I just want to make sure that that's what you thought, or maybe it was like that person, like, giving out water. I don't know.
Yeah, so to clarify, the question is it the executive must personally distribute this, or arrange a network by which this will occur?
Because I think that's what like people are assuming now, so I'm not sure.
So what to your understanding is the intent of this motion?
I think, judging from the way it's written, it just means like the executive as a governing body distributed it, not Landon and Toby personally.
So yes, which that also does reflect on the amendment, the subsidiary amendment proposed and being considered.
I still mean them.
You okay?
Yeah.
Mine's the same.
Point of information.
I missed where that was. Yes.
If the amendment to the amendment carries, I feel that would put all of council in a conflict of interest, trying to decide between whether or not they want to get drunk on that day or volunteer to help out.
So anything that affects all members of the body equally can by definition never be a conflict of interest. Weirdly enough.
Point of information from last year's Fall Festival, when council decided that there should be programming on the original date, every single person on council volunteered that day for at least an hour. So there was a piece there that brought them in, and it was a joint decision where people bought into that philosophy that we were trying to help students, and we came together as a group. And a lot of our coordinators and associates in the USC also volunteered with us.
Yes.
Lucy, Health Science Counselor. Yeah, I would just like to also add on, like, jokes aside and everything, I know HOCO is a great time to have lots of fun and however you choose to have fun. But I also think that if we choose to take this stance and say that we believe in the health of our students and we want to make sure that they are being safe, then we need to ourselves express that by coming forward, taking responsibility, and at least, like executives have been saying, like, take the initiative to, at least take a shift, like an hour or 2 hours or something, to go and help contribute to the health of our students, like we are saying we are advocating for, and like we care so much about. So I'd just like to remind council of that.
Thank you. Yes.
Just like to add into that again, agreeing with like the way like Landon was trying to say it, like, yes, it is like all of our responsibilities, because again, some of us were acclaimed, but many of us were elected at the same time, and we do have that responsibility or obligation, like taking, like say, like Lucy said, 1 hour out of your day, or how Max said 1 hour out of your day is not going to be like the be all and end all. You can still have fun, and you're gonna be like literally right in the streets, like hanging out and partying with people. You're just going to be a little sober. I know people like like at least you're gonna be like within like a range, but like after that, like council won't dictate how you choose to have fun or where you choose to go after. But again, we do have that responsibility if we pass this, saying that yeah, we're gonna do it. And I mean, our executive team is only composed of many people, and how many people tend to party off campus during FOCO or HOCO? It's a lot. It would be much more attainable and much more reasonable if we have, again, all members of council taking turns, taking shifts. That way, even our executives can, once their shift is over, have fun, because I know our executives like to do more than like hang out in the office up there. Like, let's be real here. They have lives too.
Right. Go ahead.
Violet Kamad, King's President. Yeah, I just want to fully agree with the two previous speakers, and honestly, we should practice what we preach, because we're all about, student well-being, advocacy, and then if we don't actually show up and be the faces out there helping our students, then are we really doing our job as representatives? And with that, I'd like to call the question for the amendment.
All right. Do I have a seconder to call the question on the amendment? Okay. All in favor of calling the question on the subsidiary amendment? This is one proposed by the VP. Opposed? Noted abstentions. All right. Voting on the
I have a
amendment
point
to
of
add.
inquiry.
Yes.
I have a point of inquiry.
Yes, go ahead.
So it's for the chair of the board. Like, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So. So just to keep. So I agree with what Violet and the other counselors have said here, but I just have a question for you. Just in case, let's say we're all out there, we're representing USC and we're distributing water bottles, let's say, and something were to go wrong or someone's not acting within the student code of conduct, would it like bring a bad image upon USC or put us in a situation that we don't want to be in? Because I think it's safe to consider that no one would do it, but there is still like that slight possibility when we're around such conditions and situations.
What do you mean by kind of acting inappropriately? Like ourselves, like councils
so like
acting inappropriately?
One of us, something happens and one of us is not in the right mind, let's say, or something. So.
Well, I think that you'd be kind of personally liable for your actions as an individual, but I definitely see a problem can arise that if a USC counselor was acting inappropriately on a USC kind of sanctioned event, handing out water, doing what they're supposed to, and they were acting inappropriately, definitely that can have negative impact on our reputation if something were to go wrong. That's 100% a possibility. I'm hoping that everybody here is mature enough not to act in that way, and I'm very confident that everybody is. But that, of course, with everything, that is definitely you represent the USC, kind of represent the university as well, and you represent yourselves. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
Okay. With that, all those in favor of the amendment, again, that is to add "and council." Opposed? Any noted abstentions? All right. Subsidiary amendment carries. That takes us back to the main amendment, which is to say adding, if possible, / as permitted by the City of London.
Motion to call the question.
Seconder? Councillor Yee, all those in favor of calling the question on the amendment? Opposed? Noted abstentions? Question is called. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Noted abstentions? Amendment carries. That takes us back to debate on the main motion. Are there any other speakers to the main motion? Yes.
Rakshid Gangreddy, Science Counselor. So the third point where it says, be it further resolved that the exec will consider the possibility of the creation of residence homecoming kits. I feel that that's largely unneeded because as somebody that's soft in residence, I know that residence already has things in place, especially during major events like homecoming or even fake homecoming or whatever. They have extra residence staff, dons and RAs on duty. They also have a lot of safe drinking presentations that have already taken place during O Week, and they also sign a student code of conduct in res. So this, I feel, doesn't really achieve anything because that's already in place. And as Toby said, that the past exec have worked with residents before in ensuring that there's a safe homecoming that happens for first years as well.
Yes.
Wouldn't that also kind of be under housing as well? Like, not necessarily us? Okay. Yeah.
I'm seeing thumbs up in response to that. Yes, it would presumably fall partly under housing, not under the USC.
Yeah.
Okay. Next.
Can we motion to take that out then?
Yes, but you have to get on the speaker list. I've got a few people ahead of you. So you're up next.
Okay, so on a separate note, so I know he was talking about something. Oh, sorry, Husnain Ali, Healthside President. On a separate note, off-campus isn't really defined here. Do we want to just like narrow it down to a street that maybe we have in our mind, or are we gonna go like, are we gonna go all the way to Fanshawe or something distributing water bottles?
You have a response to that?
I would not, just for the sake of the fact that do we want this to be the USC formula as a corporation, formally recognizing Brofdale as a street. Obviously, like that's kind of what's happening, but I just think that it's a slippery slope in that sense.
So like she suggested a radius instead of like saying an exact street, because there should be some kind of limit. Like off campus can go anywhere.
Like I think it's safe to assume, unless you want to just go on a walk with water bottles. But if that's like, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying.
I'll add that it's sort of implied in any given motion that within reason is tacitly written into it, absent something explicitly saying otherwise. Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to go back to my potential other amendment, adding that, I don't know how to word it exactly, but I guess that task the 2017-2018 UXC Executive and Council with not only distributing water and food, but also devising some initiatives to further promote our intention of, ensuring the safety of our students, right? So that could be maybe calling up some food trucks, having them coming, providing some alternative food options, awareness campaigns about, what are your rights, where should you not be drinking for your own legal purposes, drinking and driving, knowledge about how to, avoid hangovers or anything like that could be negative, detrimental to the body. And we don't have to put them specifically in there, but those are just these sort of ideas that I'd like to outline in people's heads so they know what I'm talking about when I say further initiatives.
I would suggest that the wording you probably want is to add a further resolution clause, be it further resolved that the USC Executive and Council shall create or shall devise, it doesn't really matter which, further health and safety awareness initiatives surrounding homecoming.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Yes. Do you want to motivate any further?
I think I've got it.
All right, and a seconder?
It's just a related point of information for that one. I did find a document on like one of the Western-based websites. It's the Sexual Violence and Harassment Action Plan Interim Report. It was submitted in 2015-2016. I just want to know if something like that still exists, because it basically outlines training for like staff members of Western as well as people within the residence structure? Like, does something like that still exist? I just wanted to kind of know.
I actually know the answer to that because it's come across the SOG's desks as well. The sort of next step in submitting that proposal to turn it into policy is continuing to work through the machinery of the bureaucracy at Western. So yes, it still exists and is continuing to be worked on and updated.
Okay, so like basically if we were to consider, like, again, like her motion's pushing to consider like different initiatives in a later setting, would something like that be included in that, or are they completely separate entities?
So part of the reason I suggested health and safety as wording is that that's relatively broadly defined. It could mean whatever, it could be taking whatever this body would later take it to mean when devising, the executive in this body would take it to mean when devising such initiatives. Again, anything that could reasonably be understood as health and safety surrounding homecoming. So that could presume, I think it would be reasonable to take that as part of it.
Awesome. In that case, I'd like to call the motion to question.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for calling the question on the amendment? Yep. All those in favor of calling the question on that amendment? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment? So the amendment is to add that further to the other duties specified, the executive and council shall come up with further sort of health and safety awareness initiatives, basic educational things for students in the lead up to homecoming. Come up with other ways to get word out about health and safety things related to the event. So all those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? Okay, that carries. Taking us back again to the main motion, I have the president next. Based on that look, is mostly not sure what he was about to say. Okay, well then, yes, and then Councilor.
Can I call this motion to question?
Yes. Is there a seconder? What? Pardon me?
Just let him do that motion.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to oppose calling it into motion because, as I said before, the third clause regarding residences is largely unneeded. So I'd like to call into motion to amend the motion.
Okay, so first we
to
do
take out the third clause.
Okay, so first we do have to deal with the proposal to call the question. So do I have a seconder for calling the question? Council Foreman, all those in favor of calling the question? Opposed? Noted abstentions? Question is not called. Now, yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, as I said before, because housing already has this sort of thing in residence, the third clause is largely unneeded, so I want to call that into motion, and I want to amend the motion to remove that.
All right, so amendment is proposed to strike the third resolution clause. Do I have a seconding? Okay, so I'll seek a seconder first. Councilor Yee, are you seconding? Okay, do you want to motivate as seconder?
As another Ontario Hall Soft, I agree with what he says. It is largely unnecessary. We already have those booths set up. I feel like just being redundant.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Calvin Ivy Counselor. As a former residence advisor and residence don, so 2 years there, a lot of the messaging around, like, especially the informal homecoming day, it's very informal. It's kind of like you as a residence don or you as a softco just chat with your students about it. I think there would be significant value in USC promotional material that can easily be distributed through your residence advisor or softs to your floor. So I think there's still substantial value to have a formalized piece of promotional material from the USC.
Over.
Victoria Broso, Science Counselor. I just have a question in regards to what is currently in place in residence for homecoming programming, I guess. This motion kind of states like a physical package that students will receive. Does something like that already exist? Or is that something we can implement in addition to the kind of programming that already exists in residence?
Do you have a response for that? Go ahead.
Yeah, so currently, to my best knowledge, the physical package doesn't exist. A lot of the material comes from housing's messaging, which is all very valid and accurate material. However, the USC itself does not provide material in terms of things like safe drinking habits and things like that, to the best of my knowledge.
And you wanted to put it
Yep, I just wanted to add to that saying, we don't have the purview to tell residence advisors to hand out certain information. That also falls under housing. That being said, housing does their own material. Yes, some of it isn't formalized, so maybe changing this to, like, I can just have a conversation with the guy from housing and be like, hey, can you guys do a little bit more? And he'll be like, yeah, sure, I'll do a little bit more. But if you want to add that to this motion, okay, but I think it's safe to say that this is already being done, and there's already an intentional effort to some extent to try and do this health promotion.
All right, Councilor Foreman.
Yeah, Jared Foreman, social science counselor. Just want to note this is not to council. This is not an authoritative point. It's consider the possibility. So that would be like what President Sholbo has said, which is talking to housing essentially.
Okay, go ahead.
Lucy Watson, health sci counselor. I'd also just like to add to that, like, I don't think any particular amendments need to be made because it does say, like Foreman mentioned, it consider the possibility of the creation. So I think it's fine to leave it in because it includes all of our students. It includes the fact that we're considering all of our students, and then we can just discuss the possibilities, the feasibility, and whatnot, and work out the semantics later.
Okay.
And I would further just like to, sorry?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So I would like to call the original motion into question then.
Need to deal with the amendment first.
Oh, okay. So can I call the amendment to question then?
Okay.
Okay.
Seconder to call the amendment, call the question amendment. Okay, all those in favor of calling the question on the amendment? Opposed? Noted abstentions? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment to strike the third resolution clause? I have to count. Keep them high. All right, opposed? Any noted abstentions? Okay, the amendment fails. That takes us back to the main motion. Do I have any speakers to the main motion? Councilor Foreman.
Jared Foreman, social science counselor. Motion to call to question.
Seconder, second Councilor Yee. All those in favor of calling the question? Opposed? Noted abstentions? Okay, on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Any noted abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. Is there any other new business? Okay, then before we conclude, so in terms of counting of the ballots that were cast recently, here's what I'm going to do. I will, once we have adjourned, count all of these. Anyone who wishes to remain to observe the counting of them is more than welcome to do so. I'll be, in this general area. You should feel no obligation to. Presumably, although I can't direct this, an email will then be sent to councilors informing them of the results. To that end, though, as is convention with any ballot election, I do need a motion to destroy the ballots once they have been counted. Would someone like to serve that motion? Go ahead. Okay, is there a seconder? Let's go ahead. Yep. And all those in favor of destroying ballots once counted? Opposed? Noted abstentions? Okay, one last chance. Any other new business?
Can we just get a quick round of applause for our awesome speaker, Chris, for volunteering?
With that, would anyone like to motion to adjourn? Let's say Landon got in there first. Anyone object to adjourning? All right, then we are done. Thank you, everyone.